Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 1, A Hope of Living. Upon hearing the words, "What a waste of a genius," Clady exulted mentally. He already knew that the Holy Emperor's choice was. "You can leave now." Haydns waved his arm and said calmly, "Yes, Your Holiness." Clady bowed respectfully, then turned and left the top floor of the Radiant Temple. In the entire hall, only Holy Emperor Haydns now remained. Walking to a window, Haydns stared down at the city of Fenley, maintaining a long silence. After a long time, knock, knock, knock. The sound of knocking on the door. "Enter," Haydns said calmly. The person who entered was Cardinal Guillermo. Guillermo glanced at Haydns's back. Able to sense that Haydns was in a foul mood, he respectfully lowered his voice. "Your Holiness, how should we attempt to persuade Linley?" "Persuade? No need," Haydns said calmly. Guillermo couldn't help but raise his head to stare at Haydns in astonishment. If they wanted Linley to be of use to them in the future, at the very least they would have to speak with him and persuade him. After all, not only had Haydns severely injured Linley, Linley had a deep grudge against Clady to begin with. "Guillermo, do you know who Linley's mother was?" Haydns turned his head to stare at Guillermo. Guillermo was startled. Curiously, he said, "Linley's mother? Didn't she die while giving birth to Linley's younger brother?" "No." Haydns shook his head. "When you investigated Linley's background and information regarding his mother, you weren't able to uncover the truth. Linley's mother was actually that woman we acquired 12 years ago. That woman from 12 years ago." Guillermo instantly remembered, because that woman had had a huge impact on the upper levels of the Radiant Church. But if we've already killed his mother, then, Guillermo instantly understood why the Holy Emperor was now in such a foul mood. A genius such as Linley was extremely enticing. But in the future, once Linley discovered the truth about his mother, he would be a huge threat to the Radiant Church. "Guillermo, the 28th of this month will be the day when the glorious aura of the Radiant Sovereign will be the strongest, is it not?" Haydns said suddenly. "Yes." Guillermo was somewhat perplexed by Haydns raising this question. "Make the preparations. That night, I intend to beg the Radiant Sovereign for a divine boon," Haydns said calmly. "Divine boon?" Guillermo was greatly shocked, but then he quickly understood Haydns's plan. He secretly sighed to himself, the Holy Emperor is most likely requesting this divine boon on behalf of Linley. Although this will limit Linley's future potential, given his talent, he will still be an incredible figure. Only, what a waste of his talent. A divine boon was in reality a manifestation of the divine power of the Radiant Sovereign in the material world. The Radiant Sovereign, as a sovereign, one of the most powerful entities in existence, could extend a thread of his divine, faith-based power to totally cleanse a person's soul, causing them to be wholly devoted and faithful to the Radiant Sovereign. Only a person who had already reached the saint level and was able to crystallize his soul would be able to resist the effects of this divine baptism. Everyone else, definitely could not resist. But after his soul had been affected by the divine baptism of the Radiant Sovereign, Linley's natural talent would be impacted as well. His future accomplishments would definitely be a bit lower. What a waste. What a waste of a talent. Haydns sighed again. This was the reason why earlier, in front of Clady, he had said the words "what a waste." Haydns was, however, very confident. Once he had been affected by the divine baptism, even if he later found out about his mother's death, Linley would still be loyal and faithful to the Radiant Sovereign. Because the faith this divine baptism created would go deep within a person's soul. In the blink of an eye, 10 days passed. The city of Fenley was as calm as it had always been, but all the major noble clans in Fenley felt a strange, oppressive atmosphere. For example, His Majesty, King Clady, was always in a terrible mood these days, and several major ministers and nobles had run afoul of his temper and been executed. On the fragrant Pavilion Road, behind a lavishly decorated hotel, a group of people were gathered together within a quiet, three-story building. Yale, George, and Reynolds had been here this entire time. Ever since they had found out about what happened to Linley, the three of them had continued to worry for Linley. They knew very well what a huge disaster Linley had dragged down upon himself. Not only had he openly attacked King Clady and killed over 1,000 elite warriors of the kingdom, he had even forced the Holy Emperor himself to subdue him in the end. "Boss Yale, have your people heard any news of Linley yet?" George asked, and Reynolds looked at Yale as well. Yale shook his head. All of them had ugly looks on their faces. They had grown up alongside Linley. At the Ernst Institute, they had eaten together and roomed together. Although they weren't actual siblings, they were as every bit as close to each other as real brothers were. There was no way they could just stand by and watch as Linley was executed. "There's no way. I don't have any means of reaching the high-level people in the Radiant Church." Yale was somewhat frantic. "Wait a few more days. My father will arrive soon." Yale's father? Monroe Menlo Dawson. The chairman of the Dawson conglomerate, and the controller of the enormously powerful Dawson clan, whose wealth made even the four great empires and the two major alliances envious. Their mercantile web had already encompassed every city in the Yulon continent, and was totally able to determine whether a nation's economy flourished or collapsed. Each of the three major trading unions possessed tremendous power. Neither the two major alliances nor the four great empires were willing to be openly hostile against them, because once one of the trading unions was openly at war with an empire, it could very well trigger an economic collapse, wiping out decades of progress and causing chaos within its domain. "Boss Yale, you told us to wait a few more days 2 days ago. If we keep on waiting, I'm afraid," Reynolds was frantic as well. There was nothing Yale could do. Fortunately, his father had been engaging in some tourism in a kingdom not too far from the kingdom of Fenley. Upon getting the news, Yale had immediately gotten in touch with his father and expressed the hope that his father could come to Fenley City as quickly as possible. Given his father's status as the chairman of the Dawson conglomerate, most likely Haydns would personally welcome him to the city. Once his father appeared, the chances of rescuing Linley would be exponentially greater. "Young master, young master." A skinny, tall youth came running in, excited. "Young master, the chairman has arrived." "Father." Yale leapt to his feet in joy. In the eyes of Reynolds and George as well, a hint of hope appeared. Within the VIP reception hall of the Radiant Temple, a 2-meter tall, bald, pudgy man stepped into the hall, grinning merrily. This bald fatty was 2 meters tall and of enormous girth, most likely weighing 300 to 400 pounds. This was the chairman of the Dawson conglomerate, Monroe Dawson. From another door, in walked the Holy Emperor, Haydns. Haydns was also nearly 2 meters tall, but he was quite thin. The two of them together, both tall, both bald, but one fat while the other was skinny, made for a very interesting sight. Behind Monroe Dawson, there were two middle-aged men. One was a golden-haired man with cold, hawk-like eyes, while the other was a powerfully built red-haired man. These two followed solemnly behind Monroe Dawson. Without question, the two of them were both combatants of the 9th rank. Behind Haydn, as well, there were two red-robed cardinals, one male, one female. These two were Guillermo and Melina Maliene. "Oh, Your Holiness!" Monroe called out in an exaggeratedly loud voice as he attempted to bow. However, that large belly of Monroe's made bowing an extremely difficult thing to do. "Monroe, please sit." Haydns was still quite friendly to him. Monroe immediately sat down, as did Haydns. Monroe's enormous butt was simply too big. Most chairs wouldn't be a good fit for him. Fortunately, the Radiant Church had prepared a special chair for him in advance. Upon sitting down, a delighted grin split his rotund face, and he laughed loudly. "Thank you, Your Holiness. On this trip, I had only intended to do some sightseeing near Greenstone Lake, but who would have thought that my son would insist on me hurrying over here? Alas, you should understand that as a father, I had no choice." "Monroe, you really do pamper little Yale," Haydn said with a smile. Monroe nodded helplessly. He, that little tyke. But I've heard Yale say that he has an extremely incredible bro by the name of Linley. Not only is he a master sculptor, he is a genius magus, and also a very powerful warrior. When I heard this, I was very much impressed. But from what Yale says, this Linley has now been imprisoned within the Radiant Temple. This is indeed the case. Haydn nodded in acknowledgement. Monroe chortled, "Your Holiness, can you give me some face and free Linley? Young people are always so impetuous. Although I know he attempted to assassinate Clady, in the end, Clady didn't die, right? I'm sure that Your Holiness wouldn't care too much about a small matter like this." Monroe spoke casually and simply. But Haydn couldn't respond to him in as casual a manner. This Monroe Dawson had gone so far as to explicitly ask Haydn to give him face. If Haydn refused, wasn't that the same as directly refusing to give Monroe face? Although Monroe was grinning cheerfully, Haydn knew very well how powerful the Dawson conglomerate standing behind Monroe was. "Monroe." Haydn shook his head. "It isn't that I won't give you face. It's that it's really not convenient for me to free him. Because, Linley killed several people from the ecclesiastical tribunal, including students of Asano Wusenyo himself. Asano is extremely angry this time." "Asano?" Monroe Dawson frowned. Asano was one of the other pillars of the Radiant Church, the praetor of the ecclesiastical tribunal. In truth, it should be said that the Radiant Church actually had two leaders, the public leader known as the Holy Emperor, and the hidden leader in charge of killings, slaughters, and eliminating heathens and apostates, the praetor of the ecclesiastical tribunal. This is going to be difficult. Monroe immediately knew that this was not good. Perhaps Haydn would care somewhat about Monroe's status, but that cold fellow Asano was nothing but a crazed killer. But Monroe Dawson could also guess something. Linley killed the students of Asano? These words are most likely a lie spun by Haydn, but there's no way I'll be able to verify this with Asano. Monroe felt helpless. He could tell that clearly, Haydn did not wish to let Linley go that easily. The Dawson conglomerate really did have its eyes set on Linley. This was especially true after discovering that Linley was capable of dragon forming. In terms of both his potential as a magus as well as a warrior, Linley's potential was incredible. Once the Dawson conglomerate acquired Linley, when Linley entered the saint level, the influence of the Dawson conglomerate would instantly supersede that of the other two trading unions. If that's the case, then I'll leave now. Monroe Dawson immediately stood up. Haydn smiled calmly. "I truly am sorry, Monroe. Right now, the Radiant Church has not internally decided on how we should punish Linley. After we have decided on how we should deal with Linley, I'll send someone to inform you." "Sure. During this period of time, I'll stay in Fenley City. I really want to see the upcoming Yulon Festival. This 10,000th Yulon Festival is sure to be an amazing spectacle. In a man's entire life, he might only see such a spectacle this one time." Monroe Dawson beamed as he spoke. After speaking, Monroe Dawson departed with his two bodyguards. Haydn quietly watched as Monroe Dawson departed. By his side, Guillermo said quietly, "Your Holiness, that damn fatty foolishly thinks he can claim Linley for his own. After the 28th, Monroe can abandon all of his hopes." Haydn turned to glance at Guillermo. Smiling, he left the hall as well. Right now, the only thing to do was to wait for December 28th. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 2, The Divine Boon Descends. On the 9th floor of the Radiant Temple. Linley seemed to have been discarded here and forgotten. The only people who came were the cold, grim purple-robed executors of the ecclesiastical tribunal who came each day bringing his meals. His arms and legs both broken, Linley's only choice was to squirm over then lower his head to the food. Within the dark, gloomy cell, one such day after another passed. Life. Or death. Linley didn't know which it would be, but Linley wouldn't so easily give up any hope of staying alive. These past few days, Linley had spent his time reviewing why his attempt at gaining revenge this time had failed. Almost everything had been within his calculations, and he even included the existence of Clady's magical beast companion in his plans. But Linley hadn't expected that Clady would have a saint-level magical barrier enchantment. Producing a barrier enchantment was far more difficult than just casting a spell. To produce a saint-level barrier enchantment, the effort that needed to be expended in both spiritual energy and mage force was greater than the effort needed to directly cast a saint-level magical spell. Linley didn't believe that Clady would have a saint-level barrier enchantment on him. Even Douring Coward had said, "Forget about Clady." Most likely, even the cardinals of the Radiant Church wouldn't have a saint-level barrier enchantment on them. Given Linley's power as a warrior of the 9th rank in dragon form, and combined with Bibi's power, Clady should have died without a doubt. Although Linley was perhaps a bit too hasty in his plan to get revenge, he should have had a nearly 100% chance of success. Alas, that Fate Guard enchantment ruined Linley's plans. Who would have thought that a mere ruler of a kingdom would have a saint-level barrier enchantment? Linley was still unable to accept it. He really just couldn't. The temperature of these winter nights was now extremely cold. There were very few people on the streets of Fenley City. A black shadow mouse was standing in a corner of an intersection, staring up at the tall and far-off Radiant Temple. The little shadow mouse just stood there and stared, not moving at all. That entire night, the little shadow mouse remained there staring, even after the sun began to rise. He didn't dare to enter the Radiant Temple, because he knew very well that the Radiant Temple was a place where even saint-level combatants feared to tread. He, a rat-type magical beast, wouldn't be able to escape. If in the end he was captured as well, Linley would only be even more heartbroken. It was day now. "Boss, I will definitely avenge you." Bibi glanced at the Radiant Temple one final time, then with a flicker, disappeared. Over the entire past 20 days, the Shadow Mouse, Bibi, had been thinking about how to avenge Linley. But he discovered that Clady was now as cautious as a bird which had been frightened by the twang of a bow. Not only did he order Magi to lay multiple magical formations around him, he also ordered Kaiser to constantly remain by his side. The little shadow mouse didn't have any chance to ambush him at all. However, Bibi was very patient. He would wait, continue to wait patiently. He would wait for the day when Clady let down his guard, and then suddenly appear and chew Clady into a meaty paste, avenging Linley. Midnight, December 28th. Clank. The door to Linley's holding cell swung open, and two vicars stepped in. They didn't seem as cold and sinister as the executors of the ecclesiastical tribunal, and they even brought a gurney. Very carefully, they placed Linley on top of the gurney, and then lifted the gurney with Linley on top of it. "What are you doing?" Linley coldly looked at the two vicars. Recollecting how Linley had slaughtered people in the past, the two vicars felt some fear in their hearts towards him. "Lord Linley, the Holy Emperor is preparing to treat your injuries," a female vicar said in a soft voice. "Treat my injuries?" Linley's heart stirred. Can it be that the Holy Emperor really is going to let me live? Linley didn't say anything else, maintaining his silence. He allowed the two vicars to carry him further upstairs into the top of the Radiant Temple. One floor after another. Finally, the two vicars carrying Linley arrived at the top floor of the Radiant Temple. Currently, this floor was very empty. In the middle of the room, there was a very complicated-looking octagram magical formation. In each of the 8 corners of the octagram, there sat quiet, barefoot ascetics with disheveled hair and sackcloth clothes. In the very center of the octagram stood the Holy Emperor Haydns, who was wearing an ornate white robe. At the edges of this top floor, there were 3 cardinals, and 2 deputy arbiters along with 6 executors of the ecclesiastical tribunal. All of these people were combatants of the 9th rank. One could tell how powerful the Radiant Church was, for it to be able to summon so many combatants of the 9th rank. Put him down. You can leave now. Guillermo spoke. Yes. The 2 vicars didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Right now, within this very room, there were astonishingly powerful ascetics, mysterious executors of the ecclesiastical tribunal, 3 cardinals, and 2 deputy arbiters. These were all important, major figures. After putting down Linley, the 2 vicars hurriedly, respectfully departed, and the door once more was shut behind them. Lying on the gurney, Linley swept the people present with his gaze. Linley could easily tell that every single person here possessed incredible, astonishing power, all at least of the 9th rank or higher. Your Holiness, what are you intending? Linley said in a hoarse voice. Haydns glanced at Linley. Laughing calmly, he said, Linley, although this time you committed a major offense, after the internal deliberations of the Church, we have decided to give you another chance. Right now, we are preparing to execute a joint spell and use it to help you heal your wounds in the best possible way. If Linley had any experience whatsoever with light-style magic, he would have quickly seen the gaps in Haydn's claims. Grandpa Douring, it seems like the Radiant Temple is planning something major. Linley was conversing mentally with Douring Coward. What's going on outside? Douring Coward very prudently didn't appear, not daring to reveal even a hint of his spiritual power. Haydns was a peak stage saint-level combatant. If Douring Coward left the Coiling Dragon Ring, the Holy Emperor would definitely discover him. There's around 20 or so people outside, and even the weakest is at least of the 9th rank. There are 8 ascetics and the Holy Emperor standing in an octagram magical formation. Linley reported. Douring Coward had far more experience than Linley. Linley, if they just wanted you to fully recover, a single saint-level combatant using the lifelite spell would be enough to fully heal you. There's no need for them to do all of this. I think they must be planning to summon the divine energy of a sovereign of light. Otherwise, there'd be no need for them to cause such a commotion. There was more than one sovereign of light. The Radiant Sovereign, however, was the most powerful one of them. Summoning the power of a sovereign. Linley was greatly shocked. They intend to use the power of a sovereign against me? What are they intending? I'm not sure either. In Douring Coward's era, both the Radiant Church and the Cult of Shadows were fairly small and weak. They're nothing more than 2 religions amongst many in the Poent Empire. Back then, the Radiant Church also had very few experts, and couldn't possibly produce as many as they did today. Your Holiness. It is time. Guillermo said respectfully. Haydns raised his head upwards, looking at the sky, then nodded. Let us begin. Haydns said calmly. A white light immediately began to emanate from the bodies of those 8 ascetics seated within the corners of the octagram, causing an extremely dense wave of light-style mage force to flow into the center of the magical formation. The entire magical formation immediately grew bright. In front of Haydns, a golden holy scripture suddenly appeared, while Haydns himself slowly began to radiate a golden light. Haydns opened the scripture to its first page. Lord, it is you who grant us everything. Haydns said softly, but his voice rang out in the hearts of everyone present like a thunderclap. At the same time, the glow from the Holy Scripture brightened dramatically, and the amount of holy white light in the magical formation increased dramatically as well. 2 lines of light intersected. Crackle, crackle. A perfectly straight line of light shot upwards, piercing into and through the very tip of the Radiant Church, then continuing upwards into the dark night. Anyone in Fenley City would be able to clearly see this holy white light, entwined with a golden light, penetrate into and past the clouds. Within the top floor of the radiant temple, Haydn suddenly turned to look at Linley. Linley felt as though an extremely dense power was lifting him up, causing him to slowly rise into the air. Linley floated over to the middle of the magical formation, directly above Haydn's head. Lord, you take pity on and love the people of this world, and in turn, we must put our faith in you. Haydn raised his head, an incomparably holy radiance emanating from his face. Rumble. The air above the radiant temple began to tremble. A cloud of white light began to gather in the air above the radiant temple, covering an extremely large expanse of space. Many of the people in Fenley City noticed it. If one betrays you, Lord, then you shall take everything from them. But those who place their faith in you, Lord, shall receive your benevolence and your love. Haydn flipped to the next page in the Holy Scripture. Boom! The world shook. In the air above the radiant temple, the darkness of the night had been shattered by that exceedingly bright cloud of light. In the middle of the cloud of bright light, a single crack appeared in space, and a line of white light shot down from the crack at high speed. Swish! That line of white light carried with it a majestic presence which filled everyone's hearts with awe. It pierced straight through the tip of the radiant chapel before finally landing on Linley, who was hovering in the air above the magical formation. Within the top floor of the radiant chapel, Haydn's, the 8 ascetics, the 3 cardinals, the 2 deputy arbiters, and the 6 special executors all raised their heads, looking at Linley. The majestic power that line of white light embodied filled even the heart of Haydn with awe and worship. Although it was just a hint of divine power, this power came directly from the radiant sovereign himself. The white light penetrated Linley's body, and Linley's entire body immediately began to emanate that white light as well. At the same time, Linley's body began to heal at an astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, Linley's shattered bones and wounds were all healed, and his physical condition was restored to a better than ever condition. Ah! Linley's soul moaned. When that ray of white light had entered Linley's body, the healing effects had only been a side effect. The primary target of this ray of white light was Linley's soul. Clearly, this ray of white light wished to sink into and merge with Linley's soul. Once this divine power merged with Linley's soul, then Linley would never again be able to shake off the control of the radiant sovereign, and would forever be his loyal vassal. But just as this was happening, an incomparably powerful force surged forth from the coiling dragon ring on Linley's finger. Passing through Linley's body, it rushed straight to Linley's brain. That terrifyingly powerful force surrounded the divine power in Linley's body and rapidly began to devour and dispel it. And then, that burst of unimaginable power once more traveled through Linley's body and re-entered the coiling dragon ring. Grandpa Douring, what is going on? Linley said frantically. No idea. That force belonged to the coiling dragon ring itself. That force was terrifyingly powerful. It was terrifying, terrifyingly powerful. Douring Coward was so shocked and nervous that he repeated the word terrifying 3 times. Douring Coward had been in possession of the coiling dragon ring 5,000 years ago, but he had never had any inkling that such an unsurpassable power lay dormant within the ring. Douring Coward was absolutely certain that if that power had been used to attack someone, even 10 peak stage saint level combatants would have been reduced to dust in the blink of an eye. Where did this burst of power come from, and what was it? Even I, the owner and master of this coiling dragon ring, was unable to sense it, much less control it. Linley knew very well that this power was not so easily used. In the past, Douring Coward had worn and used this ring for over 1,000 years when he was alive, but had never used or discovered this burst of power. While this was occurring, all of the people in the top floor of the radiant temple were astonished. The Holy Emperor Haydn, the 8 ascetics, the 3 cardinals, the 2 deputy arbiters, and the 6 executors all stared in disbelief. They could tell that Linley's body didn't show a single hint of having received the divine baptism. There wasn't even a radiant seal on his forehead. How is this possible? It failed. Haydn stared at Linley, stunned. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 3, would definitely die. All of the powerful people in the highest floor of the Radiant Temple were stunned. Linley's soul was a huge distance away from the level of crystallizing. He was nothing more than a magus of the 7th rank. Even an archmagus of the 9th rank wouldn't be able to resist the divine baptism of the Radiant Sovereign. How is this possible? The ascetics, executors, and deputy arbiters all began to mumble amongst themselves, unable to believe what they had just seen. It actually failed. The divine boon actually failed to successfully create a new blessed one. Then, how should we deal with this Linley? Haydn stared at Linley, suspended in mid-air. An absolute genius such as him will definitely be a peak stage saint level combatant within 100 years. He might even become more powerful than me. By that time, the glory of our radiant church will be able to spread across an even wider territory. Haydn's really couldn't bear to just kill Linley. Your Holiness! Guillermo called out softly. Haydn's is lost. Confused gaze suddenly sharpened. He had made his decision. Your Holiness, Linley hasn't become a blessed one. Then we? Guillermo asked. Haydn's looked at Linley. Under his control, Linley's body slowly drifted down to the floor. At this point in time, Linley pushed himself to a standing position with his hands. Right now, Linley's body was totally uninjured. It must be said that receiving a divine boon had its benefits. Linley looked at the mighty people surrounding him. These people are all combatants of the 9th rank at least. If I were to struggle against them, I wouldn't have any chance at all. Linley coldly stared at Haydn's and the others. Your Holiness, what exactly are you intending to do with me? Suddenly, a smile appeared on Haydn's face. No need to ask too much. Executors, return Linley to his private room. Yes, Your Holiness. Those 6 special executors nodded. Without giving Linley any chance to react, they immediately headed towards Linley, as one of them barked out, Move! Or do you want us to drag you? They were forcing him by their actions. Linley had no options. Fine. Linley opened the door and began to walk downwards. Those 6 executors followed directly behind Linley. As Linley went down the stairs one level at a time, he saw that all of the guards, upon seeing those 6 executors, were all extremely respectful. Those 6 special executors all wore bluish-violet robes. Those icy eyes of theirs stared at Linley, making him feel as though, if he acted untowardly in any way at all, they would immediately kill him. After the 6 executors had escorted Linley away, the female cardinal, Melina, asked, Your Holiness, that Linley didn't become a blessed one. Although we don't know the reason why not, the decision we must come to right now is, what should we do with Linley? Guillermo and the others all looked at Haydn's. Linley was a genius. They all knew this. But Linley hadn't become a blessed one, and his mother had been killed by the Radiant Church. The Church had to come to a decision: would they accept the risk of recruiting Linley and hide the truth behind the death of his mother? Or would Linley be put to death? Although it would be possible to hide the truth behind his mother's death for a time, once Linley entered the highest ranks of the Radiant Church, it would most likely be impossible to hide it any longer. Haydn's face was cold. In a cold voice, he said, Kill. Guillermo and the others felt their hearts quiver. In a few more days, it will be the 10,000-year anniversary of the Yulon festival. Let's arrange for Linley's execution to be after the festival. Haydn's announced. Guillermo, who had the closest relationship with Linley, sighed in his heart. A genius who would have dominated the entire continent would now see his fate cut short. Guillermo knew very well that with Linley imprisoned in the Radiant Temple, there was no way Linley would be able to escape. Linley wouldn't even be able to leave his cell. That Caesar has some sort of a relationship with Linley, but even Caesar doesn't have the ability to break into the Radiant Temple to rescue Linley. Guillermo sighed secretly. Linley would definitely die. On the 9th floor of the Radiant Temple, within the private cell. Get in. Linley entered the cell, and the 6 executors closed the door behind him. As the 6 executors turned and immediately left, one of them, a silver-haired man, turned to look at Linley. Kid, let me give you a reminder. Although you have recovered your strength, don't dream about breaking out of this cell. The other 5 executors halted as well, and a bald old executor laughed. Break out of the cell? Kid, if you are able to break out of this cell, that would mean your power is on the level of His Holiness himself. What do you mean? Linley asked. Linley himself couldn't see anything special about this cell. Given his power as a warrior of the 9th rank when dragon formed, an ordinary stone cell would be shattered as easily as paper. The Radiant Temple is the most incredible edifice the Radiant Church possesses. The entire temple itself hides a massive magical formation within it known as the glory of the Radiant Sovereign. It's impossible for you to do the slightest bit of damage to it, whether from the inside or from the outside. That silver-haired man said proudly. Kid, let me tell you, the only chance you have of breaking out from this cell is by breaking the lock on the cell door. I can also tell you that the lock is made from metals that were alloyed with some adamantine. Finished speaking, the 6 executors laughed loudly amongst each other, then left. Linley was silent. When he heard the words, adamantine, Linley understood that it was probably impossible for him to break out. According to legend, when the Earth-style spell Earthguard reached the deity level, the Earthguard armor would be composed of adamantine. Its power and durability was enough to be able to withstand several blows of even a deity-level combatant. As for a saint-level combatant, there was no way at all for them to break it. Linley was an Earth-style magus, and so naturally he knew about the legends regarding the Earthguard armor at its peak power. Upon becoming a saint-level Grand Magus, the Earthguard armor would be composed of diamonds, and upon breaking through to the deity level, the armor would be of adamantine. Linley, I expect that this cell is used for the Radiant Church to imprison combatants of the 9th rank, or perhaps even the saint level. Douring Coward spoke. Although this lock only has a trace amount of adamantine and isn't pure adamantine, it would probably be hard for even a saint-level combatant to break it. Linley nodded. From the words of the executors, he had already figured out that he would not be able to break out, as they had said that breaking out would demonstrate Linley's power was at least on par with the Holy Emperor. That next afternoon, Monroe Dawson, Yale, Reynolds, and George were all seated together around a table covered with breakfast items. During this period of time, Yale, Reynolds, and George had never stopped being worried about Linley. But even Monroe Dawson making a personal appeal had failed. What could they possibly do? Break into the Radiant Temple to rescue Linley? Even Monroe Dawson wouldn't dare to do such a thing. Yale, in 2 days, it'll be the Yulon Festival. This Yulon Festival will be the 10,000th Yulon Festival, which we'll only see once in our lives. You 3 kids can have a nice, rowdy time. Monroe Dawson chortled. Monroe Dawson had treated these 2 dear brothers of his son Yale with the utmost friendliness. This was because all 3 of Yale's brothers were quite out of the ordinary. Linley, George, and Reynolds. Reynolds' clan possessed an astonishing amount of power in the O'Brien Empire's military. George's clan held tremendous influence within the Yulon Empire, and wasn't much weaker than the Leon clan. As for Linley, although his clan was now weak, it was still the clan of the Dragon Blood Warriors. And Linley's own potential was limitless. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps. "Milord Chairman, an emissary of the Radiant Church have arrived," a servant said respectfully. Hearing the words Radiant Church, the eyes of Yale, George, and Reynolds all lit up, and they turned to look at the servant. Monroe Dawson knew what his son was thinking, and he immediately instructed with a laugh, "Let them in." Yes. A short while later, a vicar walked in. He said respectfully, "Chairman Dawson. His Holiness instructed me to deliver this letter to you." As he spoke, he withdrew from within his clothes a beautifully, lavishly decorated letter. The servant immediately accepted the letter, then gave it to Monroe Dawson. Monroe Dawson immediately opened the letter. But upon seeing the contents of the letter, his face changed. He said coldly, "You can leave now." That vicar bowed slightly, then left. "Father, what is in the letter?" Yale asked urgently. "Does it have to do with Third Bro?" Reynolds and George all looked hopefully at Monroe Dawson. Monroe Dawson nodded. "The Holy Emperor informs me that the internal deliberations of the Radiant Church have concluded. They will execute Linley in secret." Monroe Dawson's words were like thunder, ringing in the ears of Yale, Reynolds, and George, whose faces immediately turned white. They were stunned for a long moment. "No, no way." Yale was the first to begin shouting. He snatched the letter from his father's hands, and with shaking hands held it as he began to read. By his side, Reynolds and George both craned their necks to take a look as well. But when the three of them saw the contents, they all turned frantic with fear. "No." Yale leapt out of his seat, intending to rush directly out of the hall. "Yale." Monroe Dawson frowned, shouting coldly. "Stop him." Monroe Dawson ordered. Yale turned his head to stare at his father. Frantic, he said, "Father, I beg you, lead some men to rescue Third Bro. If necessary, the conglomerate can give up something valuable. I refuse to believe that the Radiant Church won't care whatsoever about our conglomerate. Father, I beg you." "Humph, what do you know? If there really were terms that could be negotiated, the Holy Emperor would have started negotiating with me long ago. The grievance which Linley has with the Radiant Church clearly isn't what we thought it was. Otherwise, the Radiant Church wouldn't decide to execute a genius like him. Enough. Men, escort your young master to his room. Let him spend a good period of time calming down." Immediately, the guards escorted Yale back to his room. No matter how frantically or how angrily Yale protested, it was of no use. Reynolds and George could only maintain their silence. They didn't have any special relationship with Monroe Dawson, after all. But in their hearts, they were frantic on Linley's behalf. A visitor had arrived at Linley's cell. It was Guillermo. "Guillermo." Linley looked at Guillermo with some surprise. Guillermo had brought with him an extremely lavish meal, and delivered it through the small opening in the cell door. Guillermo looked at Linley. He let out a sigh. "Linley, I really viewed you very favorably. But, alas. Perhaps it was meant to be. That you couldn't become a member of our Radiant Church. All right, have a good meal. You won't have many meals left." Hearing these words, Linley was stunned. "Lord Guillermo, what do you mean by saying this?" Linley looked at Guillermo. Guillermo let out a sigh. "In 2 days, which is to say, January 2nd, the last day of your existence will arrive." Guillermo really did like this young man, Linley. Especially after finding out the reason why Linley attempted to assassinate Clady, Guillermo felt all the more regretful for how Linley's fate had turned out. He could have had a glorious future, but for the sake of his parents' deaths, he was willing to forsake everything in order to gain revenge. Although he, Guillermo, would never have acted in such a way, in his heart, he still felt admiration for Linley. January 2 ND. Linley's facial expressions changed several times, but finally he closed his eyes. He already completely understood. Clearly, in 2 days, he would be put to death. "Thank you, Lord Guillermo. If it wasn't for you, I would have clung to the hope of surviving." Linley laughed calmly. Guillermo looked at Linley. With a low sigh, he shook his head, then turned his head, leaving Linley alone in his cell. January 2nd. They had to wait until after the Yulon festival to kill me. Tomorrow will be the Yulon festival. I believe it will also be the day of Coiling and Alice's marriage as well, right? Knowing that he was about to die, Linley somehow felt calmer and more at peace than he ever had before. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 4, A Giant Foot. The night between year 9999 and year 10,000. The snow flew about as the temperature in Fenley City dropped to an astonishing low. Within a cold cell in the Radiant Temple, Linley was resting against one of the icy stone walls of the cell. Linley didn't notice the cold at all. I know that I am about to be put to death, but I don't have any ability to resist at all. Linley lowered his head, sighing softly. He had made attempts, had tried. But this cell was exactly as the executor had described. It possessed incredible endurance, and even in dragon form Linley was not able to break the lock or the room in the slightest. All he could do was quietly wait for the sentence which was soon to be carried out. The dark night went by quickly, and that great blizzard finally came to an end as well. Both the nobles as well as the commoners were celebrating, in their own ways, the arrival of this 10,000th Yulon festival on this glorious, cloudless day. In particular, the Radiant Temple. On this day, in the air above the Radiant Temple, countless beautiful mirages and illusions created by magical formations were on display. In the holy capital, Fenley City, today was a day for a sea of celebrations. That massive plaza in front of the Radiant Temple was filled to the brim with people who hailed from all sorts of places. Everyone was calling out in excitement to each other over this 10,000th Yulon festival, and the Radiant Temple organized many lively activities as well. Yale, Reynolds, and George were within the third floor of a hotel. They stared at the faraway Radiant Temple Plaza. The plaza was covered densely by people, a veritable sea of people. "Boss Yale, are we going to go to the wedding ceremony of the Debs clan today?" George asked. The wedding of Coiling of the Debs clan was on Yulon Day. Today was an extremely propitious day. And there were many families in Fenley City holding wedding ceremonies on this day. These sorts of weddings would start at noon, and continue until nightfall. Yes. Of course. Yale had an ugly look on his face. Due to Linley's affairs, Yale, George, and Reynolds were all in low spirits. Third bro was too soft-hearted towards this B*TCH and that punk Coiling. But now, third bro is going to be executed, while that B*TCH and that punk Coiling are going to be enjoying themselves and hold a wedding ceremony. Yale was burning with rage. He had never looked kindly upon Alice and Coiling. Especially right now, with Linley on the verge of being executed, and himself unable to save him. He had no place to vent his frustrations and anxiety. This only made him now view Alice and Coiling even more unfavorably. Right. They want their wedding to go smoothly? In their dreams. Reynolds ground his teeth as well. Even George felt a desire to wreck this wedding. Yale, George, and Reynolds had all been consumed by worry for Linley for days now. Knowing that Linley was about to die, but not having the ability to rescue him, they couldn't help but think back to all the years they had spent together growing up. They hated themselves all the more for not having the power to save him. And right at this time, Alice, who had discarded Linley, was now going to get married to Coiling. How could these three just let it slide? On Greenleaf Road, the Debs clan's manor. At noon, one noble or magnate after another arrived at the Debs clan's manor. Although after the smuggling case, the Debs clan was no longer one of the topmost clans of the Kingdom of Fenley, they were still a clan with some influence. At least, in the Kingdom of Fenley, they could still be ranked amongst the top 20. Lord Count Juno has arrived. Lord Baron Prepule has arrived. Nobles, noble ladies, affluent girls, all entered the manor of the Debs clan. The leader of the Debs clan, Bernard, welcomed them all in a very friendly manner. The Debs clan's power had shrunk dramatically, but within the kingdom of Fenley, they were still able to remain standing on fairly stable footing. Lord Duke Bonald has arrived. Hearing the words Duke Bonald, many nobles turned to look at the door. Even Bernard immediately hurried over to welcome him. Right now, the highest-ranking person attending this wedding ceremony would be Duke Bonald. Last time, at the engagement ceremony, even King Clady, the ruler of Fenley, had come. But this time, for the wedding proper, His Majesty did not come. Everyone knew the reason why. Lord Duke, your attendance brings great honor and joy to our Debs clan. Bernard said humbly. Duke Bonald nodded. After the assassination attempt at Linley's manor, the right Premier Merritt had died. Although Clady had promoted another important minister to the rank of right Premier, in terms of influence, there was no way he could compare for now with Merritt, who had been right Premier for decades. What's more, the Minister of Finance, Patterson, was also dead. Right now, in the entire kingdom of Fenley, perhaps the most powerful, influential figure aside from the ruler was this left Premier, Duke Bonald. Coiling, come and pay your respects to Duke Bonald. Bernard immediately called out. Coiling was dressed very handsomely today. The pure black tailored suit he was wearing made him the most outstanding-looking young man present today. Coiling very modestly bowed in front of Duke Bonald. Duke Bonald, welcome to my wedding. Congratulations, Coiling. Duke Bonald said with a casual laugh. But just at this moment, young Master Yale of the Dawson conglomerate has arrived. When these words rang out, Bernard's eyes immediately lit up, and even Duke Bonald headed over alongside him. These other nobles of Fenley naturally couldn't compete with the Dawson conglomerate. The Dawson clan of the Dawson conglomerate was one of the most powerful clans within the entire Yulon continent. Yale, dressed in a sleek black suit. Reynolds, dressed in a handsome blue suit. George, dressed in a faintly checkered white suit. The three walked in, shoulder by shoulder, causing all the watching nobles to stare at them with bright eyes. Generally speaking, Magi would have a certain aura about them. This was because Magi often entered the meditative state, resulting them being very much in sync with natural elemental essence. That, combined with their powerful spiritual energy, gave them a certain aura. In addition, Yale, George, and Reynolds all belonged to ancient clans. Clearly, their refinement and aura could not be matched by the likes of most nobles in Fenley. Young Master Yale, welcome. And these two are. Bernard could tell at a single glance that these two definitely weren't from any ordinary clans either. Yale laughed calmly. These two are my two dear brothers from the Ernst Institute. Reynolds courteously said, Mr. Bernard, I am from the Dunstan Den Sitan clan of the O'Brien Empire. You can address me as Reynolds. The Dunstan clan. Both Bernard and Duke Bonald were startled. Everyone present with some experience knew of the fame of the Dunstan clan. The Dunstan clan was an extremely powerful clan within the O'Brien Empire, a clan which controlled an exceedingly powerful military force. Young Master Reynolds, our Debs clan warmly welcomes your arrival. Bernard said excitedly. The arrival of a young master from the Dunstan clan naturally gained a great deal of face to Bernard. Nearby, Coiling also bowed very courteously. But it was clear that the difference between him and a descendant of one of the great clans was extremely large. And this? Bernard looked towards George. George smiled. Mr. Bernard, I come from the Walsh Washi clan of the Yulon Empire. The Walsh clan. The hearts of all the nearby nobles thumped hard. The Walsh clan was an ancient clan with thousands of years of history. In the Yulon Empire, they possessed tremendous influence, and was pretty much on the same level as the Leon clan of Dixie and Delia. Young Master George, your arrival today brings exceptional honor to our Debs clan. Bernard was extremely humble. Both the Walsh clan and the Dunstan clan were extremely powerful clans from the four great empires. They were clans which could influence the internal strategies of their respective empires. Even before the fall, the Debs clan couldn't compare with the likes of these clans, much less the current Debs clan. The wedding ceremony of the Debs clan was a very lively affair. Many nobles as well as many young noble ladies wanted to strike up conversations with Yale, George, and Reynolds. In the eyes of those young noble ladies, even if they abandoned the thoughts of becoming a principal wife, if they could become even just a secondary wife to one of those three, their clans would receive countless benefits. As for the original center of attention, Coiling, much less attention was now paid to him. But there were three people whose attentions were focused on him: Yale, Reynolds, and George. "Look! Miss Alice and Miss Rowling have arrived." Suddenly, a voice rang out in the hall. Right now, the two female leads had appeared, dressed in beautiful wedding gowns. They entered from a side door, and Coiling immediately went to go welcome them. Very naturally, both Alice and Rowling slipped their arms around Coiling's. At this time, Yale, Reynolds, and George finally acted. "Haha, Coiling, these two must be your wives, right? They really are beautiful." Reynolds was the first to laugh and walk over. Seeing them walk over, Coiling immediately headed towards them with his two wives. "Rowling, Alice, pay your respects to these three young masters. This is young Master Reynolds of the Dunstan clan, and this is..." But halfway through his words, George let out a cry of surprise, shouting out loudly, "Alice! You're getting married to this Coiling." George's shout was very loud. These words caused the entire hall to fall silent. To say something like this at someone's wedding ceremony was far too impolite. "Right, Alice, aren't you dating our third bro?" Reynolds added. It was Yale's turn to speak. "Second bro, fourth bro, you two didn't know this, but this Alice has already broken up with third bro. She's going to get married with this Coiling now. She broke up with third bro." George and Reynolds both shook their heads, sighing. Reynolds then immediately said, "Alice, since you abandoned our third bro to be together with this Coiling fellow, then you definitely will be his principal wife, right?" "Actually, no. The principal wife is this Miss Rowling." This was already proclaimed at the engagement ceremony. Yale immediately said. These two sentences made Alice's face turn scarlet, while the look on Coiling's face was extremely awkward as well. But not a single person in the entire hall dared to berate Yale, Reynolds, or George for their discourtesy. Given their statuses, who would dare? "Three young masters, we have to toast our guests. Please excuse us." Coiling forcibly suppressed the rage in his heart and spoke modestly. "All right." Reynolds nodded as well. Coiling immediately led Rowling and Alice towards other tables. Yale, George, and Reynolds only coldly watched him depart. Thinking about how Linley was probably going to be executed soon, their hearts were filled with even more rage at the injustice of it all. Suddenly, bam! 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 A terrifying series of sounds could be heard from outside. It was a low, somber sound that made the earth tremble with each vibration, and all of the utensils in the hall were knocked to the floor. "What's going on outside?" A nobleman in the hall stood up in surprise. "Rowling, Alice, stay put." Coiling immediately ran out of the main hall with his father, and many other nobles ran out as well. They wanted to see what exactly was going on outside, for such a huge ruckus to be caused. Reynolds, Yale, and George also headed outside, curious. But right at this moment, bam! A giant foot suddenly descended from the heavens, landing directly in the front courtyard of the Debs clan's manor. That giant foot just happened to land directly on Coiling and Bernard, who had just entered the front courtyard. The sound of bone splintering could be heard as the two of them, father and son, were immediately smashed into a meaty paste. The ground was stained with their blood. That foot was over 4 meters long, and was covered with thick golden fur. Ah! Many people raised their heads to stare at the monster. This was an enormous golden furred ape, at least 20 or 30 meters tall, the size of an 8-floor tall building. This gigantic golden ape's eyes were like a pair of giant purple carriage wheels. The giant golden ape's body seemed to be brimming with power, causing the very air around it to shudder. Violet-eyed gold fur ape. A saint-level magical beast, the violet-eyed gold fur ape. Seeing this magical beast, Yale couldn't help but stare at it, his jaw slack. That violet-eyed gold fur ape raised its head, letting out an excited howl, and spoke in the human tongue, "Ha ha, kill, ha ha, kill them for me. Kill them all. The more you kill, the greater the rewards the king will give you. Ha ha, kill." Bam. Screech. Yale, George, and Reynolds could suddenly hear the howls and cries of magical beasts from all directions, as though the entire world had suddenly been filled with them. Suddenly, Yale, George, and Reynolds saw that the entire sky had been filled with countless, innumerable flying magical beasts. Dragon hawks. These are dragon hawks. This, Reynolds was stunned and slack-jawed as well. From far away, an enormous flock of dragon hawks had appeared, covering the entire sky with their presences. The density of dragon hawks was so high that there was no way to count their number. Suddenly, everyone felt as though the day of the apocalypse had descended upon them. Right now, no one could be bothered to grieve or feel pity for Callan and Bernard, who had been crushed to a pulp by that giant foot of the violet-eyed gold fur ape. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 5, Apocalypse Day. What on earth is going on? Yale, Reynolds, and George were all stunned. Just moments ago, they were participating in a wedding banquet, but then all of a sudden, a giant violet-eyed gold fur ape had dropped out of the skies, apparently with a huge host of magical beasts behind him. That incredibly supermassive flock of dragon hawks in the sky was terrifying to behold. Not only were the three brothers stunned, all of the people within the city of Fenley were stunned. "Get out, now!" Yale immediately shouted. Yale, George, and Reynolds hurriedly fled from the Debs clan's manor. Fortunately, the violet-eyed gold fur ape didn't pay any attention to the three of them, because there were simply too many people running about in Fenley City. Someone worthy of the violet-eyed gold fur ape noticing would have to be at least a combatant of the 9th rank or a saint-level combatant. "Young master." The vast majority of the guards of the Dawson conglomerate had undergone training in the mountain range of magical beasts, and so were able to maintain their calm despite seeing that vast number of magical beasts descend upon them. "Quick, to my father!" Yale immediately shouted. Escorted by the Dawson conglomerate bodyguards, Yale, Reynolds, and George quickly rushed back to the Dawson conglomerate's headquarters. On the way back, Yale noticed that there were a huge number of flying magical beasts already within the city of Fenley. Not only were there dragon hawks, there were also winged pegasi. There were also magical beasts of the 7th rank such as thunderwing pegasi and blue-eyed thunderhawks. And magical beasts of the 8th rank such as golden sunhawks as well as various giant dragons. Both the skies and the streets of Fenley City were covered with massive magical beasts. The apocalypse had descended onto Fenley City, and there was no way to fend it off. Even the weakest of the giant flying dragons was a magical beast of the 8th rank. Over 100 giant flying dragons had come to attack. Who could stop them? Even the 8 ace regiments of the Radiant Temple would see their numbers cut in half from a single combined fiery blast from those 100+ dragons. Apocalypse! Apocalypse! The entire Fenley City had already sunken into a mass of fires and floods. But the dwellers of Fenley City didn't know that these magical beasts made up only a fraction of the total number coming, because the magical beasts on the ground far outnumbered the flying beasts. But in terms of speed, of course the flying magical beasts were much faster and had arrived first. Thus, the flying magical beasts had led the attack as the vanguard. The soldiers standing on the walls of Fenley City were all stunned. This was the 10,000th anniversary of the Yulon festival. Just earlier, during lunch, they had all celebrated by drinking alcohol, but now, all they could see were endless numbers of magical beasts. And in front of them, magical beasts. So many. So many. Those soldiers were all speechless. The earth was shaking. Outside the city of Linley, an army of hundreds of thousands of windwolves were charging towards the city at high speed. Just the very sight of those hundreds of thousands of windwolves charging at them in masse was enough to freeze the blood of the watchers. Where are the Magi? Magi. Magi cannons. Load the Magi cannons. The army officers all began shouting loudly, trying to do their best to get their soldiers ready. In reality, they also knew that struggling was hopeless, because a huge number of winged magical beasts had already descended within the heart of Linley City. "Captain, what is that?" Suddenly, a soldier stared speechlessly at the skies. The captain looked in that direction as well, and saw that up in the air, there was an enormous magical beast that was speeding towards them. This magical beast had no wings at all, but it sliced through the air as it flew towards them at astonishing speed. Flying in the air. This is a saint-level magical beast. A saint-level magical beast. That captain now understood that there really was no chance at all. Grow or. At the same time, far away from Linley City, a terrifying roar could be heard. A huge form passed through the horde of windwolves at high speed, moving so fast that it was at least 10 times speedier than the windwolves. It probably wasn't much slower than the saint-level beast flying in the air. This was an enormous beast, at least 30 meters tall. Physically, it looked exactly like an enormous lion, except its eyes were bloody red. A magus on the walls of Linley City screamed, "Saint-level magical beast, bloody-eyed maned lion." Heavens, another saint-level magical beast. It's a bloody-eyed maned lion. Amongst behemoth-type monsters, only the golden behemoth is a match for it. Everyone was stunned. There was no way they could match it in power. Ha ha. Bloody, why are you, a saint-level magical beast, running on the ground? The giant beast flying in the air spoke with words that sounded like booming thunder. Quite a few soldiers below raised their heads to look up. It's speaking in human tongues. So it's true that saint-level magical beasts can speak in human tongues. This was the first time anyone present had ever personally encountered a saint-level magical beast, much less two of them. By now, they could tell what the magical beast in the air looked like. The body of saint-level magical beast above was obsidian black, and it looked like a dragon, but without wings. Saint-level magical beast, tyrant Wyrm. A hegemon amongst dragons. Another magus cried out in terror. Dragons were primarily divided into two types. The first type was the winged dragons, such as the 8th-ranked emerald dragons and fire dragons, or the 9th-rank silver dragons, black dragons, and frost dragons, or the saint-level gold dragons, prismatic dragons, and bloodgem dragons. The other type was the wingless dragons, such as the 7th-ranked velocidragons, the 9th-ranked armored razorback Wyrms and stegoworms, or the saint-level thunder lizards, tyrant Wyrms, and triceratops Wyrms. The main difference between winged dragons and wingless dragons lay in the power of their bodies. The wingless dragons possessed immense power within their bodies. The armored razorback Wyrms, the stegoworms, the thunder lizards, and the tyrant Wyrms all possessed incredibly durable bodies that were somewhat stronger than winged dragons of the same rank. Humph, enough chit-chat. Let's compete and see who can kill the most. The bloody-eyed maned lion's terrible voice growled out, shaking the earth with its echoes. Fine. The tyrant Wyrm roared in response. Instantly, that enormous, 100-meter-plus body of the tyrant Wyrm descended from the heavens, aiming directly at the city walls. The walls of Linley City were extremely sturdy, and were covered with countless powerful magical formations. But because there were too many flying magical beasts present, there was no way to activate the magical barriers without interference. Do you think you can run faster than me? The bloody-eyed maned lion roared angrily as well, increase its speed still further. These two terrifying massive beasts charged towards the city, one from the air, another from the ground. The walls protecting Fenley City were over 10 meters thick. Walls that thick were definitely capable of defending against enemy armies, but facing two such terrifying magical beasts. After all, Tyrant Wyrms and bloody-eyed maned lions could only be matched by peak stage saint-level human combatants. Bam! At virtually the exact same instant, the tyrant worm and the bloody-eyed maned lion slammed into the wall. Under the attack of these two saint-level massive magical beasts, the 10-meter thick wall was only able to serve as a slight, momentary impediment. And then, in the next heartbeat, the section of the walls blocking them collapsed entirely. Boom! Those two parts of the wall exploded, sending rubble flying everywhere. The rubble alone killed many people. Grow. The bloody-eyed maned lion and the tyrant Wyrm excitedly charged towards the heart of Fenley City. Given their astonishing speed, most people would totally be unable to dodge out of the way of their charge. Their massive weight and the force of each step would most likely heavily injure even a warrior of the 9th rank. A warrior of the 8th rank would die from being stepped on, no question at all. Hundreds of thousands of windwolves charged forward, like the boundless waves of the sea, charging through the openings created by the two saint-level magical beasts. Other windwolves just leapt directly into the air, bypassing the wall entirely. Windwolves possessed incredible leaping abilities, after all, and were able to leap 20 to 30 meters in a bound. These walls were totally useless in stopping them. Hundreds of thousands of windwolves had entered Fenley City. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The earth continued to shake with thunder-like galloping sounds. Behind the windwolves were countless numbers of different types of land-based magical creatures. There were mastodons and other creatures far more terrifying than windwolves. Those soldiers who had been lucky enough to survive, staring at that massive flood of magical beasts, knew true despair. The holy capital is finished. Staring off into the distance, a soldier hiding in a corner of the wall said in despair. Crunch. A windwolf suddenly appeared next to him and bit his head off in a single bite. A cell in the 9th floor of the Radiant Temple. What is going on? Linley climbed to his feet. He could feel the ground shaking and hear the thunderous roars, howls, as well as screams of misery from outside. Having stayed so long within the mountain range of magical beasts, Linley could tell just from listening to the sounds what sorts of magical beasts had arrived. Why are there so many magical beasts here? They seem to be everywhere. Linley was totally amazed. Boom. A terrifyingly powerful force struck against the Radiant Temple. All the walls of the Radiant Temple suddenly began to glow with a dim light. Despite having received such a tremendous blow, the Radiant Temple had managed to withstand it. This Radiant Temple's defense is really something. A deep, thick voice growled from outside. The power and strength of that voice was such that even in his cell, Linley could clearly hear each word. Someone is attacking the Radiant Temple. Linley found it somewhat hard to believe. The Holy Union was one of the 6 major powers, and the Radiant Church had existed for millennia. In all that time, no one had ever dared to attack the Radiant Temple. But given the attack just then, as well as that loud voice, someone had definitely just attacked the Radiant Temple. King. Suddenly, in unison, several rough voices rang out loudly. There was definitely more than one loud voice. Stop. An angry bellow. That's the Holy Emperor. Linley could clearly tell it was him, but right after the Holy Emperor's voice rang out, there was a bam. A terrifyingly powerful force descended upon the Radiant Temple, causing the entire Radiant Temple to shake violently. The light shining from the myriad complicated magical patterns covering the Radiant Temple began to flicker and shudder, while on the walls of the temple, cracks began to emerge. How terrifying! Douring cowered-side in amazement. A single attack was enough to nearly collapse the entire radiant temple. Bam! Yet another terrifying strike. This time, even the giant magical formation covering the radiant temple, the glory of the radiant sovereign, wasn't able to withstand it. With an exploding sound, the radiant temple split open at the middle, and the top 8 floors of the radiant temple collapsed. The protective magical formation was destroyed. Linley could feel his cell beginning to shift about, as if it were sliding down. Linley was both amazed and overjoyed. Before this, the cell walls were extremely sturdy, because any force used against it would be absorbed by the entire magical formation. But now, the magical formation itself had been destroyed. Linley's hands transformed into a pair of draconic claws, and he immediately smashed a giant hole into the walls with 5 or 6 punches. Linley immediately burst out from within the hole he had just created. Blood-violet God's Word. When Linley had been seized, the blood-violet God's Word had been taken from him by the Radiant Church. But since the blood-violet God's Word had already been personalized and bound by Linley long ago, with a mental command by Linley, it began to fly towards his direction, arriving in Linley's hands shortly afterwards. By now, the Radiant Temple was in a state of chaos. No one could be bothered to worry about Linley. With a tap of the foot, Linley sent himself leaping down into the plaza below. Right now, the Radiant Temple plaza was littered with corpses. Far too many had just died. There were many people engaged in battle against magical beasts as well. So many people. Linley was totally stunned. The skies were filled with countless types of flying magical beasts: dragon hawks, blue-winged hawks, winged pegasi, thunder-winged pegasi, emerald dragons, fire dragons, black dragons, all sorts of dragons. The sight of these creatures blocking out the sky with their mass was enough to freeze anyone's heart. And the numbers of magical beasts on the ground were even more astonishing. Is that? Linley stared in the direction of the Radiant Temple. In the air directly above it, there were over 10 enormous magical beasts. A savage world bear, bloody-eyed maned lion, electro-bold panther, thunderwing white tiger, thunder lizard, tyrant wyrm. Linley saw one legendary saint-level magical beast after another, all hovering in the air above the Radiant Temple. He was totally stupefied at the number of saint-level magical beasts that had just appeared. What's more, the person leading these saint-level magical beasts seemed to be a human. He was a very devilish-looking young man, wearing a dim gold robe, with a strange slit-like scar on his forehead. This devilish young man was calmly looking at Haydn's and Haydn's forces. Haydn's, Mr. Fallen Leaf, and 5 other saint-level human combatants were all standing in mid-air, staring back at the young man. Clearly, the Radiant Church's side was in very bad shape. Haydn's and the other humans were furious. I really am so sorry for disturbing you on your Yulon festival, but I must inform you that your Radiant Church needs to go find another place to be your holy capital. The devilish young man said calmly. Linley could clearly hear these words, and he couldn't help but be secretly shocked at how terrifying this young man was. Boss, boss. Linley suddenly heard Bibi's voice ringing out in his mind. Linley could sense Bibi's location, and he couldn't help but turn to look at him. He saw a black blur pass through the massed throngs of people and magical beasts. Very shortly afterwards, the blur arrived, and with a leap it threw itself directly into Linley's arms. Bibi. Linley felt extremely moved. Boss. In Linley's arms, Bibi was also so moved that his little eyes turned moist. Book 7. Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 6, Deity-Level Combatant. There were magical beasts both inside and outside of Fenley City. Countless numbers of magical beasts. This city, which had just been celebrating the 10,000th Yulon festival, now found itself having run into the day of apocalypse. Deaths were happening constantly, and the population of this holy capital, Fenley City, was dropping at a terrifying rate. Both the higher-ups of the Radiant Temple as well as the commoners were all fleeing for their lives from the magical beasts. Quick, quick, stop dawdling! Duke Bonault roared furiously. Right now, Duke Bonault didn't give a damn about his king. He only led his own family out of his duke's manor, along with 10 of his most powerful guards, immediately fleeing towards the outside of the city. The only thing he had on him was a few Magi crystal cards. They were fleeing for their lives. "Father, let's go rescue Nessa and Aishat," pleaded Duke Bonault's son Albert Aivote. "You bastard, if you want to live, then follow me." Duke Bonault howled furiously. "Let's go." Duke Bonault paid no more attention to his son, and immediately led his wife and his other children out. As for Albert, he hesitated there for a moment, then ground his teeth and pulled out his sword as he ran in the other direction. "You ungrateful whelp!" Duke Bonault swore, but in his heart, he was extremely grieved. But Duke Bonault knew very well that right now, Fenley City was covered with magical beasts. Magical beasts of the 7th rank could appear at any time, and even magical beasts of the 8th rank and 9th rank were not rare. Right now, if they didn't immediately flee the city, they wouldn't have a chance at surviving. "Son, forgive your father," Duke Bonault said to himself, while at the same time, he shouted at his guardsmen. "Quick, let's leave Fenley City. Once we've reached safety, each person will receive 30,000 gold coins." At a time like this, Duke Bonault was not going to be stingy. "Yes, Lord Duke." The guardsmen exulted. 30,000 gold coins was more than enough for them to live out their lives carefree. But after traveling just 2 or 3 kilometers, they had already encountered and killed 2 magical beasts of the 7th rank, 5 magical beasts of the 6th rank, and 3 magical beasts of the 5th rank. Gruel! A 10-meter-high black bear began to run at them from high speed from far away, each step causing the earth to shake. Seeing the black bear, all of the faces of the guardsmen turned white, and Duke Bonault shouted loudly, "Quickly, flee! That's a violet-tattooed bear! Quickly!" An adult violet-tattooed bear was generally a magical beast of the 9th rank. The saint-level violet-tattooed bear which Linley had encountered in the Foggy Valley within the mountain range of magical beasts was a particularly strong representative of its kind. Gruel! The violet-tattooed bear clearly had its eyes set on Duke Bonault's group, and it continued running towards them, causing both the earth and the hearts of Duke Bonault's group to shake. The violet-tattooed bear was running in a totally direct line towards them. Anything which got in its way was smashed. Bam! With a wave of its arm, a 3-story high building was disintegrated, showering Duke Bonault's group with rubble. Smash! A piece of rubble nearly half the size of a man came smashing down on one of the young daughters of Duke Bonault. The pretty, delicate head of that girl was instantly transformed into a pile of mud like meat paste, as blood and brain matter splattered across the stone and across the ground. Duke Bonault and his men didn't even have the chance to be angry or to be heartbroken, because immediately afterwards, the violet-tattooed bear slammed down its huge paws upon one of the guards, turning him into nothing more than ground meat. Ah! Duke Bonault suddenly realized that a giant foot was coming for him, and he frantically tried to roll away. Whap! The violet-tattooed bear stepped on Duke Bonault, killing him on the spot. If someone as weak as Duke Bonault would have been able to avoid the attack of a violet-tattooed bear, then the violet-tattooed bear wouldn't have been worthy of being classified as a magical beast of the 9th rank. Gruel! The violet-tattooed bear raised its head and roared, beating its chest with excitement, before turning and heading in a different direction to find more prey. Crushed to death. Swiped to death. Slapped to death. Bitten to death. This was extremely common and normal, now. Regardless of whether they were nobles or commoners, right now in Fenley City, life was a very fragile thing. And so, one noble and commoner after another died. Fenley City was a scene of utter catastrophe. And the place where the slaughter was the most ferocious, was the area around the Radiant Temple. On the massive plaza in front of the Radiant Temple, the mighty knights of the Radiant Temple as well as the executors of the ecclesiastical tribunal were engaged in ferocious battle against the magical beasts. The defense here was the stiffest, and so even more magical beasts congregated here as well. Linley and Bibi were in a corner of the Radiant Temple plaza, but the two of them were very safe. This was because, given their current strength, they had nothing to fear as long as a saint-level combatant didn't come attack them. And right now, all the saint-level combatants were in the skies above the Radiant Temple. "Boss, there's so many saint-level magical beasts." Bibi's voice rang out in Linley's mind. Linley looked up again at the saint-level magical beasts in the air above the Radiant Temple. Linley hadn't expected that at a critical moment such as this, the Radiant Church was able to mobilize 7 saint-level combatants within Fenley City. The saint-level combatants which the Radiant Church officially acknowledges having can be counted on one hand. In truth, it has many powerful combatants lying hidden. This is just the Holy Capital, yet they already have 7 saint-level combatants. Most likely the total number of saint-level combatants within the Holy Union is a good deal higher. Linley finally had an idea of what the highest levels of power within the continent were like. The aura of a saint-level combatant was enough to cause dread in lesser individuals. Any of the 7 saint-level humans in the air above could easily kill Linley, as though Linley were nothing but an ant. But right now, those 7 saint-level humans were at a definite disadvantage. Magical beasts were naturally more powerful than humans. For ordinary magical beasts, immediately upon reaching the saint level, despite being early-stage saint-level magical beasts, generally only middle-stage saint-level human combatants would be a match for them. For those particularly powerful magical beasts which reached the saint level, such as an armored razorback Wyrm, or a tyrant Wyrm, or a 9-headed serpent emperor, immediately upon reaching the saint level, they could only be matched by a peak-stage human saint-level combatant. And right now, over 10 saint-level magical beasts stood in mid-air, and amongst them were a bloody-eyed maned lion, a tyrant Wyrm, a violet-eyed gold-fur ape, and other incredibly strong saint-level magical beasts. Any one of them was capable of fighting with the Holy Emperor head-to-head. What was even more amazing was that in front of these magical beasts, there was that devilish young man. "Are you a human, or are you?" Haydn stared at that devilish young man. The devilish young man glanced coldly at Haydn's. "A human? How could I be a pathetic human? Humans are nothing more than food to us magical beasts." The devilish young man's words were loaded with absolute contempt. Even when looking at Haydn's, he was filled with nothing but utter contempt. "Haha, if our almighty king wished to kill you, it would be as easy as flipping over his hands. He's giving you guys face. You'd best accept it." "Haha," that violet-eyed gold-fur ape shouted loudly with laughter. The expression on Haydn's face changed dramatically, and so did the faces of the 6 saint-level combatants behind him. A magical beast that could take human form. What sort of power was this? Could it be that yet another deity-level combatant has appeared on the Yulan continent? An invincible entity. Haydn's felt extremely sour. In the past, there had only been 3 individuals who had stood at the very peak of power in the Yulan continent: the war god of the O'Brien Empire, the high priest of the Yulan Empire, and the king of the Forest of Darkness. Haydn's didn't imagine that the mountain range of magical beasts would suddenly produce its own king, who was able to take human form as well. Broke through the saint level to reach the deity level. A deity-level magical beast. This, Haydn's knew very well how terrifying a deity-level magical beast was. To this king, killing these 7 human saint-level combatants would be like child's play. Haydn's instantly made his decision. They had to retreat. Right now, preserving as much power as remained to the Radiant Church was the most important thing of all. If it lost 7 saint-level combatants, the Radiant Church's power would drop by at least a large half, and its status would drop as well. A deity-level magical beast. How could a deity-level magical beast appear out of nowhere? Haydn's cursed to himself. He had no idea that this deity-level magical beast had been accidentally released by Linley from within the foggy valley. And as it just so happened, when this deity-level magical beast had implemented the plan he had been formulating for over half a year, he had accidentally saved Linley. Fate truly was a strange thing. Mighty king of magical beasts, I am the holy Emperor Haydn's. Might I ask what you wish of me? Haydn's decided to submit. The devilish young man smiled and nodded. Your name is Haydn's. Very well. What you need to do is lead your people and flee to the north. The magical beasts of my mountain range of magical beasts will also continue to expand to the north. When the day comes that my magical beasts feel they have enough territory, they will stop expanding. Haydn's heart was filled with fury. What sort of offer was this? When they felt they had enough territory, they would stop expanding? Humph, don't worry. We won't take over all of the territory belonging to your holy union. At most, we'll take half. Right, as of right now, the holy capital of the cult of shadows has been destroyed by us as well. The devilish young man said casually. The holy capital of the cult of shadows. Haydn's and the other 6 saint-level combatants were all startled. Could it be that the magical beasts of the mountain range of magical beasts had launched simultaneous attacks against both the Radiant Church as well as the cult of shadows? This was too insane. They knew that the magical beasts in the mountain range of magical beasts were quite numerous, and there were quite a few saint-level magical beasts there as well. But they hadn't imagined there would be enough to launch simultaneous assaults against 2 major powers. You can beat it now. Oh, and there's one more thing I can tell you. My name is Dylan. The devilish young man said casually. Hearing the conversation going on up above, Linley was totally stunned. Clearly, this horde of magical beasts wasn't just attacking Fenley City, it was attacking the entirety of both the Holy Union and the Dark Alliance. And judging from what the devilish young man was saying, they intended to take over half of the territory of both the Holy Union and the Dark Alliance. Then it seems the 12 kingdoms and 32 duchies to the west of the mountain range of magical beasts are going to plunge into disaster. Linley felt terrified. The king of the mountain range of magical beasts, Dylan. Linley firmly imprinted this name, Dylan, into his memory. After having quietly listened for a while, Linley stealthily made his way through the crowds and departed, heading to his own residence at high speed. This was because he had left a number of things back at his manor. Hool! A powerfully built windwolf noticed Linley and immediately lunged at him. Swish! A flash of violet light. Linley didn't even pause or slow down, but that powerful windwolf suddenly split in half, staining the ground with its blood. On the road back to his manor, Linley saw that the streets had become avenues of death and destruction. There were magical beasts everywhere. But by the time Linley reached the intersection between the Fragrant Pavilion Road and the Greenleaf Road, Linley saw a squad of troops numbering 30-something strong. Wherever this squad went, the magical beasts were unable to block them. Boss Yale. Linley suddenly saw that Yale was bound on the back of a powerful warhorse. Second bro and fourth bro are here as well. Only, they are riding their horses. Father, let me go, let me go. Let me go save third bro. The Radiant Temple has already been demolished. This is our best chance to save him. Tied up and bound, Yale continued to shout loudly from his position on the back of the warhorse. The person actually riding the warhorse was an extremely powerful-looking red-haired man. The feeling he gave Linley was that he wasn't weaker than Kaiser at all. Shut your mouth. Riding in the center of this convoy was an extremely fat man, who was wielding a giant battle-axe in his hands. It danced like a vicious blur in his hands, clearly possessing tremendous power. Father? Is that the chairman of the Dawson conglomerate? Linley secretly mused. With a few leaps, Linley reached the convoy in seconds. Boss Yale, Reynolds, George. Linley shouted loudly. Yale, who was in the middle of shouting, was startled, and he couldn't help but turn to look. Reynolds and George, who had been maintaining their silence while riding, turned to look as well. Seeing the blood-splattered Linley, and that familiar-looking little shadow mouse, BB, on his shoulders, the eyes of all three of them turned instantly red. "Third bro!" All three of them cried out in joyful unison. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 7, Fleeing in Panic. When the chairman of the Dawson conglomerate, Monroe Dawson, saw what was going on, he immediately ordered, "Halt!" In unison, all of the riders immediately pulled sharply on their horses' reins. The horses rose high in the air on their hooves, then came down and halted. "Release the young master," Monroe Dawson instructed. The red-haired warrior of the 9th rank in charge of Yale's protection and escort waved his hands, and the ropes covering Yale instantly split apart. Yale immediately jumped down from the horse. As for George and Reynolds, they had jumped down long ago already. "Third bro, are you okay?" Reynolds was so excited that his eyes were red. "Third bro, this is wonderful. I knew you would be fine," Yale said excitedly. George didn't say anything at all, just thumping Linley on the chest. "Third bro, let's go. Leave Fenley City with us," Yale immediately said, and Monroe Dawson also spoke out now. "This would be Linley, right? Come along with us. As long as we aren't attacked by a saint-level combatant, our safety should not be a problem at all." Monroe Dawson desired very much to have Linley be a member of the Dawson conglomerate. What the Dawson conglomerate lacked the most was saint-level combatants. "No need. I have some affairs to settle. Boss Yale, second bro, fourth bro, you leave first." Linley shook his head. "Third bro, are you actually going to?" Yale shouted in shock. Yale already guessed at what Linley was planning. Linley nodded. "Right. Clady had to die. Last time, he failed because of the saint-level fate guard, but Linley believed that, given it was already extremely rare for a ruler of a kingdom to possess a single fate guard, there was no way that Clady could be in possession of a second one. Right now, the saint-level combatants of the Radiant Temple were all focused on saving their own skins. It was highly unlikely that they would care about protecting a king at this point. "Boss Yale, you can leave now. I'll go find you all later," Linley said. "There's too many magical beasts here this time. I'm afraid that the Ernst Institute is going to be attacked as well, given its proximity to Fenley City. We won't be heading back to the Institute." After reaching a safe location, both Reynolds and George planned to go back to their own empires. "As for me, I'll follow my father for now," Yale replied. George and Reynolds both nodded. "Good. Then in the future, I'll go looking for you all. Boss Yale. Second bro, fourth bro, farewell." Linley stared longingly at his three good brothers, nodded heavily a single time, then turned and leapt in the opposite direction at high speed, traveling over 100 meters in 3 steps. Yale, Reynolds, and George all understood that seeing this third bro of theirs again in the future would be quite difficult. The three of them immediately mounted their horses. Go. The Dawson conglomerate's convoy headed out once more. This day, countless clans within the city of Fenley were on the brink of annihilation, and the Debs clan was no exception. The clan leader, Bernard, had been crushed to death by the violet-eyed Goldfur Ape's foot, along with the successor, Kalen. The other clan members didn't have any time to consider who the next clan leader should be, because immediately afterwards, they suffered an even greater loss. Magical beasts began attacking the Debs clan's manor. Guards, servants, maids, clan members, they all died, one after the other. The people of the Debs clan all went wild, grabbing what valuables they could get their hands on and fleeing in all directions. By now, nobody would think about helping others. "Big sister Alice, what should we do?" Rowling was stunned. Alice was stunned at first as well, but now she recovered. "Come with me," Alice immediately shouted. Alice was a magus of the 4th rank, after all, while Rolling was a warrior of the 4th rank. Considering their ages, this was actually quite impressive. But in a situation where magical beasts of the 5th rank were everywhere, they didn't have the ability to resist at all. Leading Rolling, Alice rushed into Kalen's room and grabbed 2 Magi crystal cards from a drawer. "Little sister Rolling, each of these 2 Magi crystal cards have 100,000 gold coins in them. They'll be enough for us to survive on. We can go now." Alice handed Rolling one of the Magi crystal cards, then they rushed out of the manor together. One of them was a magus, the other was a warrior. They were in fairly good physical condition, and were able to run quite agilely. "Save me! Ah!" A maid frantically ran past Alice and Rolling, while behind her a windwolf was in hot pursuit. The windwolf viciously charged directly to her, then snapped directly at her throat. Staring at Alice and Rolling, the maid's eyes were filled with the desire to keep living. But then, her eyes grew dim and faded. Rolling stood there, staring stupidly at the spectacle. "Hurry, let's go." Alice pulled at Rolling's hands. To try and be benevolent right now was to court certain death. Right now, even combatants of the 9th rank didn't dare to be too self-sacrificing, much less them. In the city of Fenley, there was currently more than 10 saint-level combatants, and nearly 100 magical beasts of the 9th rank. The lower-ranked magical beasts were even more plentiful, especially the 5th and 6th ranked magical beasts such as the horde of wind wolves, which numbered in the hundreds of thousands alone. There were only 1 million or so denizens in Fenley City to begin with, and most of them only possessed strength at the 1st or 2nd rank. They had no chance of fighting back. Rip! Alice and Rolling, these 2 weak girls, ripped off the dress part of their wedding gowns, so as to allow themselves to run faster. "Big sister Alice, there are magical beasts up ahead," Rolling suddenly called out. "This way." Alice pulled Rolling by the hand, rushing towards a small alleyway. But after crossing through the alleyway, they saw that the other side also had magical beasts. Alice and Rolling were forced to stay in the middle of the alley, between 2 manors. But suddenly, from the other side of the alley, a vampiric iron bull charged towards them. "Let's go." Alice pulled strongly at Rolling's hands, and they rushed out of the alleyway. They ignored the magical beasts up ahead. There were many people up ahead as well. After all, those magical beasts might not necessarily target the 2 of them. They continued to charge forward as frantically as they could. Their breaths were hoarse and ragged. This life and death juncture had increased their anxiety to the highest level. Howl! Howl! Suddenly, from behind them, over 10 windwolves suddenly charged forward at high speed. Windwolves were simply too fast, possessing more than double the speed of Alice and Rolling. Very soon, the 10 windwolves would catch up to them, and at the same time, up in front of Alice and Rolling, an enormous landworm appeared. The landworm was large enough that just by standing there, it blocked off almost half of the Greenleaf Road. And with that draconic tail, there was nowhere for Alice and Rolling to flee. Big sister Alice, Rolling felt somewhat hopeless. Alice looked at that enormous, 2-story tall landworm, then at the ravening pack of windwolves charging in their direction. She couldn't think of any way to escape at all. "Am I going to die?" Alice couldn't help but tightly embrace Rolling. At this moment, she too felt that all hope was lost. From behind, the 10 windwolves were about to arrive, their white fangs gleaming with a cold light. A beautiful flash of violet light. The heads of the 10 windwolves instantly flew apart. A human figure descended from the heavens, then charged directly towards that enormous landworm. That is, Alice and Rolling stared stupidly at the person who had suddenly saved them. Alice could clearly see who it was. A long, long time ago, something like this happened as well. A lost look in her eyes, Alice stared at that figure. It was Linley. In truth, Linley's own residence was located right across the street from the Debs clan's manor, and right now, Alice and Rowling were only a few dozen meters away from Linley's manor. Linley wouldn't just watch someone die without helping, after all. Arg. Twisting his waist, Linley applied power to his legs, kicking out forcefully like the snapping of a whip. Like an iron whip, Linley's leg snapped out, piercing through the air with a shriek as it landed against the skull of the landworm. And as this was happening, Linley's leg suddenly became covered with black scales. Demi-dragon form. Bam! This kick was simply too fast. Caught off guard, the landworm was unable to react, and its skull exploded from the force of this blow. The enormous body of the landworm collapsed, slumping to the ground. Linley landed on the ground. Rowling and Alice, watching all of this, were somewhat stunned. Big brother Linley, Alice said softly. Linley turned to look at them, a frown appearing on his face. Linley didn't have the spare time to lead these two girls around, but if Alice and Rowling were to be here by themselves, they would definitely die. But then, Linley suddenly saw a squad of knights charge over at high speed. Within this squad of knights was an old man riding a handsome stallion. It was managing director Maya of the Prolix Gallery. Under this assault by the magical beasts, the collections within the Prolix Gallery were essentially finished. Director Maya was only able to collect the most important pieces within his interspatial ring of holding. These interspatial rings were extremely valuable and rare. Even Director Maya only had one because his clan had passed one down. Director Maya! Linley shouted loudly. Seeing Linley, Director Maya was extremely excited. Master Linley, you are here. The people Director Maya admired the most were those master-level sculptors, so naturally, Director Maya greatly admired Linley, this young man who was able to so easily carve out a sculpture that was almost on the same level as Prolix and Hope Jensen. There were actually very few people who knew about Linley's attempted assassination of King Clady. In the outside world, the story was that a demon had attempted to kill King Clady. Naturally, Director Maya didn't know the truth. Master Linley, come along with us. Director Maya was very confident. The martial force of the Prolix Gallery was quite high. As long as they weren't attacked by a saint-level magical beast, they definitely wouldn't find surviving to be a problem. Director Maya, no need. But I hope you can help me. These two girls have some ties to me, and I hope you can take them to a safe location. Linley instructed. No problem. But Master Linley, Fenley City is not safe right now. Director Maya hurriedly said. No need. I have affairs to settle. I entrust these two girls to you. After he spoke, Linley immediately disappeared into his manor. Alice and Rowling exchanged glances, and then immediately were ordered by Director Maya to mount a horse and integrate into the convoy. He, actually didn't say a single word to me. Alice suddenly felt a little heartsick. The sound of hoofsteps unabated. Director Maya's convoy, along with Alice and Rowling, departed. Only now did Linley emerge from his manor, bearing a black parcel on his shoulders. This parcel contained several Magi crystal cards, some of the remaining blood rupture poison powder, and blue heart grass. BB, now we head to the palace. Boss, let's go have ourselves a slaughter. BB was excited as well. Linley immediately led BB and moved at high speed towards the palace. Quite a few people had already fled, but Clady had gone into the royal treasury instead. How could Clady abandon the riches of the royal clan which had been accumulated for countless years? The wealth of a royal clan was an incredibly large figure. The Debs clan, at its prime, was worth perhaps 100 million gold coins. But a corrupt major official such as Duke Patterson had also managed to accumulate around 100 million gold coins. As for the wealth stored within the palace treasury, that was worth far more. Within the treasury, This is the wealth that has been accumulated by countless generations of rulers of Fenley over thousands of years. Staring at the treasures within the treasury, Clady didn't have too much time to ponder. He grabbed the most valuable items and directly absorbed them into his interspatial ring. As a king, Clady had been lucky enough to procure an interspatial ring as well. And these 32 Magi crystal cards. Clady looked at the Magi crystal cards in his hands. These 32 Magi crystal cards were all unbound, and they represented thousands of years of wealth that had been accumulated by the kingdom. Each card contained within it 100 million gold coins. The 32 Magi crystal cards, in total, represented a wealth of 3.2 billion gold coins. This was a terrifying sum. Perhaps even some of the major clans of the four great empires didn't have such a large sum of gold. A popular saying was that the easiest way to make money was to become a king. The wealth that had been accumulated by kings over thousands of years was naturally astonishingly high. The capital, Fenley City, is finished. Clady turned to give the remaining treasures one last look, then ground his teeth and left. But what Clady didn't realize yet was that it wasn't just the capital which was finished. The entire kingdom of Fenley had now become the territory of magical beasts. He, Clady, was no longer a king. What's more, it wasn't just the kingdom of Fenley that had been destroyed, a huge amount of the territory belonging to the Holy Union was being rapidly devoured and claimed by magical beasts. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 8, One Hand. In a secluded courtyard within the palace, the most important members of the royal clan of Fenley were gathered, including Clady, his wives, and his many children. The entire city of Fenley is swarming with magical beasts. We definitely cannot all travel together in a large group, as that would attract some extremely powerful magical beasts. Clady said solemnly. This reasoning was something everyone understood, and was the reason why Director Maya and Menlo Dawson were traveling in small convoys. Convoys of a few dozen people were everywhere in Fenley City, and weren't remarkable at all. But a convoy of several hundred people would draw the attention of magical beasts of the 9th rank, and perhaps even result in an attack from a saint-level magical beast. The most dangerous thing one could do right now was to attract attention from magical beasts. Care Kale, you and your mother shall lead a division of the Wild Thunder Squad soldiers. Here are 5 unimprinted Magi crystal cards. Remember, this represents thousands of years of accumulated wealth of our clan. Clady looked solemnly at his son. There were too many people in the royal clan. They had to go in separate packs. Clady didn't want for his clan to be annihilated. By going in separate packs, the chances of at least some surviving would be greater. Yes, father. Care was overjoyed. Thousands of years of accumulated wealth, how much would that be worth? Shake, you, your mother, and your younger sister will also lead a division of the Wild Thunder Squad soldiers. Here are 5 Magi crystal cards for you as well. Clady withdrew another 5 Magi crystal cards and handed them to his second son. Both of the princes were extremely excited. Clady's face was very solemn. He said, the elite soldiers of our clan will be divided into these 3 divisions. Care's, Shaq's, and my own. No matter who manages to survive in the end, at least our clan will continue. Enough, let's head out. Kaiser, as the instructor for the Wild Thunder Regiment, you will come with me. Clady looked at Kaiser. Yes, Your Majesty. Kaiser nodded. The Wild Thunder Regiment was the most powerful defensive regiment within the Kingdom of Fenley. The entire regiment, including Kaiser, only consisted of 100 people, giving each squad only 33 soldiers. But although they were small in number, they were high in quality. Even the weakest member of this regiment was a warrior of the 7th rank. Divided into 3 squads, the royal clan immediately began to flee in 3 separate directions. Swish! Linley leapt up at a high speed. At the same time, there was a violet flash of light, and the Thunderwing Pegasus that was harassing Linley suddenly split into two halves. Linley continued to run forward, making his way towards the palace at high speed. On the way, he passed by far too many human and magical beast corpses. Arrived at the palace, Linley was leaping forward so fast that his body was naught but a blur, and with each movement, he traveled dozens of meters. This sort of astonishing speed made it impossible for magical beasts of the 5th and 6th ranks to stop him. Whew! Linley easily leapt up over 10 meters in the air, flipping into the interior of the palace. Roar! The sound of magical beasts roaring could be heard from within, as well as the battle cries of soldiers. Right now, there were no longer any guards at the palace gates. The only things present were corpses, blood, and rent flesh. And, occasionally, a massive corpse of a magical beast. Like an agile tree cat, Linley leapt his way through the tops of the various palace buildings. But when Linley arrived on top of one particular roof, he suddenly saw a mounted squad far away. Right now, virtually no one was using carriages anymore. Carriages were simply too slow for fleeing. That is. Linley instantly was able to recognize that golden-haired man in the center of the squad. It was the Golden Lion, Clady. Clady was currently issuing orders to his soldiers to kill the magical beasts besieging them. This squad's teamwork was really quite marvelous. When a group of elite warriors of the 7th and 8th ranks worked together as one, they were actually more powerful than a group of the same size consisting only of warriors of the 8th rank that had no teamwork. Clady. Linley's eyes lit up. Boss, let's make our move. BB was excited as well. Wait. We can't afford any mistakes this time. Wait for his squad to get closer to us, and then we will launch a sudden ambush. Linley remained on top of the roof, his cold eyes focused on that distant mounted squad. Don't waste any time. Quick. Clady swung the giant warsword in his hands, chopping down a dragonhawk from midair. During this past half-month, Clady had managed to purge a small amount of blood rupture poison from his system, allowing him to recover 10% of his battle chi. Although it was just 10%, he once more had the power of a warrior of the 8th rank. But Clady recognized that he would most likely need another half-year to purge the remaining 90% of blood rupture poison from his body. Where the hell did all these magical beasts come from? Bastard! Clady was growing more and more furious. These magical beasts had destroyed his capital, and now they were threatening his life. How could he not be angry? Quick! After killing all of the attacking magical beasts, Clady immediately pressed his men to hurry on, and the troop of knights once more sped forward. As Clady and his men traveled at high speeds through the pathways between the palace buildings, they didn't notice at all that someone was lying in wait on the roofs above. Watching Clady and his men draw nearer and nearer, Linley narrowed his eyes. All the fur on BB's body was standing straight up. Now is the time. Linley's voice rang out in BB's head, and the two of them, man and magical beast, flew at high speeds towards Clady. In that split second before launching, Linley's entire body was suddenly covered with a layer of black scales, and spikes sprouted from his forehead, his elbows, and his knees. From behind, that draconic tail sprouted out as well. Dragon form. That squad of knights lived up to their reputation of being elites. As soon as Linley and BB flew towards them, they immediately noticed and tried to react. But Linley and BB were simply too fast. Ah! It's you. Immediately seeing that terrifying creature, Clady knew without a doubt that Linley had come. He didn't have time to wonder why Linley wasn't dead yet, because Linley's draconic tail had already arrived, viciously slapping at him from just 2 meters away. Behind him, Kaiser had already become caught up dealing with that black shadow mouse and wasn't going to be able to save him. Whap! Linley's draconic tail slapped down mercilessly, and Clady quickly dodged by tumbling to the ground. Linley's tail thus landed on the horse, and the animal was split into 2 halves by the sheer force of that vicious blow. The warhorse let out a pain-filled whinny before collapsing. Fallen on the ground, Clady pressed down on the ground with his fists and quickly retreated. But now, Linley came chasing after him. Swish swish. At the same time, 8 spears gleaming with battle chi were thrust at Linley. Harg! The dragon blood battle chi in Linley's body burst forth, and he used his right leg to viciously kick at the ground. He instantly reached an extremely high momentum as he shot forward like a boulder that had been catapulted forth in anger. Linley's body smashed fiercely against those 8 spears. The 8 spears shuddered at almost the exact same time, and those 8 streams of power essentially managed to cancel out with the power of Linley's charge. This will be troublesome. Linley frowned. He didn't expect those 8 knights would be able to block his attack so effortlessly. But what Linley didn't know was that those 8 knights were shocked and terrified as well. These 8 knights were Clady's personal bodyguards, the most elite of the elite Wild Thunder Regiment. All of them were warriors of the 8th rank. Working together, the 8 of them would even be able to hold off a warrior of the 9th rank. However, not even a warrior of the 9th rank would dare to forcibly ram into their spears. But Linley had. What a freakishly strong defense! Hiding far away and protected by the remaining knights, Clady's heart trembled. Scree! Bibi let out a piercing screech, then swept his fierce claws at Kaiser again and again, while sometimes using his fangs to bite at him as well. But Kaiser rather effortlessly managed to use his great sword to block each of Bibi's attacks. Kaiser's sword techniques seemed very simple but were highly effective. One step back, then a piercing stab with the sword that seemed incredibly hard to block. Clady, who is going to rescue you today? Linley looked at the mighty warriors in front of him and sneered. Fine, you want to engage in group attacks. As soon as Linley finished speaking, he immediately charged at one particular knight. Linley didn't fear or pay attention to the attacks of the other knights, simply aiming himself at that one knight. Now, their combined attacks were useless. Whoosh! Linley was simply too fast. In the blink of an eye, he arrived by the side of that warrior of the 8th rank. Balling his fierce claws into a fist, he slammed it towards that warrior. The warrior leaned back to avoid it, but at this time, Linley's draconic tail suddenly swung forward and crushed the warrior's skull in. Thrall Saer. Many of the knights howled in fury. The Wild Thunder Regiment had always trained together. And their affection for each other was no less than that of blood brothers. Many warriors furiously aimed their attacks at Linley, and despite their anger, they were still able to coordinate their attacks very well, as great swords and long spears attacked in perfect sequence. Pew! The blood-violet god's word suddenly appeared in Linley's hands. Ignoring the attacks aimed at him, Linley flew to another knight while thrusting blood-violet directly towards his eyes. The sword went straight through his skull. The man died immediately. Die! Instantly, another one of the knights pierced at Linley's head with his own spear. Linley flipped blood-violet around and struck a counter blow. Just as the knight was about to attempt to block it, blood-violet suddenly curved in midair and effortlessly cut the knight's head off. Even without being activated by battle chi, the blood-violet god's word in Linley's hands could easily kill a warrior of the 7th rank. And now, suffused by Linley's dragon blood battle chi, the blood-violet god's word was more than capable of killing a warrior of the 8th rank as well. Bizarre attacks. 3 of the warriors of the 8th rank had died in the blink of an eye. I want to see how you'll block me. Linley once again charged towards Clady, the devilish blood-violet god's word flashing non-stop in the air. None of the knights dared to close with Linley, because that god's word in Linley's hands was simply too bizarre. Gruel! Suddenly, from far away, a roar could be heard. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Ponderous, heavy footsteps shook the earth. The deep sounds and vibrations made it more than clear that this was an enormous magical beast headed their way, and it was drawing closer. But Linley didn't care about anything at this point. Block him, block him. Clady shouted loudly, while continuing to retreat. Linley suddenly leapt into the air, launched himself off a wall, and flew towards Clady at high speed. Seeing this though, Kaiser instantly kicked off and launched himself backwards as well, transforming into a blur and sweeping the great sword in his hands directly towards Linley. Come! Linley didn't attempt to block the sword at all, aiming the blood-violet God's word in his hands directly at Clady. Last time, you had a saint-level fate guard to protect you and Haydns to save you. I want to see who will rescue you this time. Linley's dark gold eyes spat death at Clady, and the blood-violet God's word in his hands struck out towards Clady's throat like a vicious snake. Right now, Clady had almost gone crazy as he began to wave the great sword in his hands in an attempt to block. Ha! Very suddenly, Kaiser released his grip on his great sword, letting it fly. Bam! Linley didn't manage to react in time, and his right arm was struck heavily by the great sword. Right at that moment, the burning battle chi contained within the great sword burst forth. Linley felt his arm suddenly grow numb. Due to this smashing blow, the blood-violet God's word in his hands was now more than a meter away from his target, Clady. Humph! The blood-violet God's word suddenly curved in midair, wrapping itself around the great sword in Clady's hands, and then slid down until it was wrapped around Clady's wrist. Chop! Whap! Clady's right hand was cut off, and it fell to the ground with a thud. The fingers on the hand were still extended, and the sword fell to the ground as well. In addition, that severed hand had a ring on it. That ring was the most precious item of all to the royal clan of Fenley, the interspatial ring. My hand! Get it back, get it back! Clady's face had turned white from the pain, but he still shouted furiously. This interspatial ring contained 22 Magi crystal cards with a total value of 2.2 billion gold coins. In addition, it had several dozen precious treasures that the royal clan had accumulated over thousands of years. Clady would rather die than allow this interspatial ring to be lost. This was the accumulated wealth of countless generations of his clan. Swish! A black blur suddenly flashed by and made off with the severed hand, then leapt onto Linley's shoulders. Boss, the more Clady wants something, the more we will work to prevent him from getting it. Standing on Linley's shoulders, BB mentally spoke to Linley. But boss, why would he want this severed hand so much? There's nothing special about this hand. Could it be that it is this ring that he wants? Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 9, Interspatial Ring. Get it back, quick. Clady was so frantic that his face and neck were both beet red with rage. He roared, the ring, get it back, get it back. 1,000,000 gold coins to whoever gets it back. When the members of the Wild Thunder Regiment heard the words 1,000,000 gold coins, a hint of greed appeared in their eyes. All of the mighty knights began launching group attacks against Linley, and the leader of the Wild Thunder Regiment, Kaiser, was the first to charge at him. Ring, looks like it really is valuable. Seeing how crazed Clady had just become, Linley couldn't help but laugh coldly. With a powerful leap, he shot backwards at high speed, retreating. While retreating, Linley quickly pulled the ring off the severed hand, and then put it on his own finger. Linley, this is an interspatial ring. Doering Coward said excitedly. Given his powerful soul, Doering Coward could instantly sense what was so special about this ring. An interspatial ring was a priceless treasure. Linley was shocked as well. He had thought that this ring was something akin to an ancestral heirloom of the royal clan of Fenley. He didn't expect it to be one of the fabled interspatial rings of legend. Interspatial rings were extremely rare. Even just 2 of the 5 cardinals of the Radiant Church were in possession of interspatial rings. No one was stupid enough to sell an interspatial ring. And once these interspatial rings were imprinted and bound by the blood of its master, there was no way anyone else could use them. This was the best place to store treasures. Of course, there was one way to open an interspatial ring: kill the owner. Once the owner died, the interspatial ring would revert to being an unbound item. At that point, one could imprint and bind it to oneself and gain access to the treasures within. Whoosh! Great sword in hand, Kaiser stared fixedly at Linley as he suddenly pierced through the air. Carrying an explosive force that seemed capable of shattering mountains, the great sword shattered the air and howled terrifyingly as it swung towards Linley. Linley could clearly, visibly see the red light flowing on the surface of the sword. This power couldn't be blocked head-on. Swish! With another leap, Linley sent himself dodging in another direction again. Bam! The wall Linley had been standing on was struck by the terrifying force of that sword. And an entire section of wall exploded outwards with the sword at the epicenter. The walls within 100 meters of that blow all crumbled and collapsed. So powerful. Linley was secretly amazed. Far away, under the protection of his remaining guards, Clady couldn't be bothered about the pain from his severed hand. He shouted loudly, "Quick, get the ring back for me, quick." Clady was about to go mad. Although he knew that Linley wouldn't be able to open the interspatial ring despite having it, if the ring remained in Linley's hands, then he, Clady, wouldn't be able to access the items within it despite being its master. 2.2 billion gold coins. What an amazing, enormous sum of money that was. Thousands of years of accumulated royal wealth. For these treasures and wealth to be taken away was more painful to him than being killed. Bam! A section of wall collapsed. An enormous magical beast was walking in the middle of the palace grounds, passing through walls as though it were walking on flat ground. One wall after another collapsed as though they were made from mud. This enormous magical beast had already noticed Clady and Linley, and it roared in excitement. Gruel! Violet tattooed bear. Seeing that familiar figure, Linley wasn't too frightened. Perhaps it was because he could still remember the terrifying power of the saint-level violet tattooed bear in the Foggy Valley. In terms of size, this violet tattooed bear was about the same size as the saint-level violet tattooed bear in the Foggy Valley, but Linley felt this bear's aura was not as formidable. This violet tattooed bear was the one which had killed Duke Bonald and his family. By now, he had begun to attack the palace. Having seen Linley and Clady's group, it was now gleefully charging through the palace towards them, roaring happily. Thud! 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 The violet tattooed bear was a machine bred for war, with a body the size of a 3-floor building and massive, sturdy bear paws. Even the sturdiest of walls would be shattered by a single blow of those paws. And right now, the bear's target was Linley and Clady's group. Clady, you want the ring? If you have the ability, come and get it. Linley shouted loudly while moving around at high speed. Bibi. You deal with those other warriors. This Kaiser, I'll handle. Linley said mentally. Fine. Boss, just watch me. Bibi excitedly scurried towards that group of warriors. Those combination attacks practiced by the warriors were all meant to be used against human-shaped opponents by attacking their vitals. They were of no use at all against a magical beast like Bibi, which was physically small, extremely fast, and astonishingly durable. Bibi stretched out his vicious claws and gave a nasty swipe. Snick! He slashed directly through half the neck of a warrior of the 8th rank, causing blood to spurt out wildly. That warrior's head directly swung down, only remaining connected to his body by a thin layer of skin. Humph! Kaiser's eyes turned red, and with an angry shout, he chopped at Linley with his great sword. With a leap, Linley dodged, while at the same time his legs spun like a tornado. Carrying the power of a pair of sharp knives, Linley's legs chopped towards Kaiser's neck. Kaiser leaned his head backwards while launching a counterattack, and Linley's kicks just barely brushed against Kaiser's face. Just a little closer, and he would have been able to kill Kaiser. While Kaiser was leaning his head back, he too launched a powerful kick at Linley, but Linley, who was in mid-air, didn't dodge at all. Swish! Linley's long, iron whip-like tail suddenly pierced through the air, thrashing viciously towards Kaiser. One attack after another. If Kaiser was to continue his attack against Linley, then clearly this attack of Linley's would hit him as well. HRMPH Kaiser kicked the ground hard, sending himself flying backwards as he retreated at high speeds while at the same time, slamming the greatsword in his hands against Linley's tail. Kaiser's speed was so fast that he had retreated roughly 100 meters in the blink of an eye. Whoosh! Kaiser once more charged forward at high speed. The greatsword in his hands was actually vibrating now, transforming into 6 illusionary swords, causing Linley not to know how to block. BB killed another warrior, this one of the 7th rank, by crushing the warrior's skull with his fangs. This was BB's 7th kill. These deaths only further enraged Kaiser, who had trained and taught these Wild Thunder Regiment soldiers. But Linley was simply too hard to deal with. Not only could Linley attack with his hands and his feet, the attack power of his tail was also extremely terrifying. And Linley's durability was astonishingly high as well. Fortunately, in terms of both combat experience and tactical acumen, Linley couldn't compare to a true warrior of the 9th rank who had trained for over 100 years. Quick, get the ring back. Clady was at the verge of losing his sanity. Right now, the situation was totally not in his favor. If this continued, they wouldn't have any chance of recovering the ring at all. Within that interspatial ring was thousands of years of accumulated wealth by the royal clan. Even if he died, he couldn't allow that ring to be lost. Roaar. The violet tattooed bear had finally arrived, and all the warriors nearby scattered in its wake. No one dared to fight with it head on. To engage in battle against a powerful magical beast of the 9th rank required one to be a warrior of the 9th rank at the very least. And given that magical beasts were naturally more powerful than humans, most likely even a warrior of the 9th rank would only be able to guarantee that he wouldn't die. That violet tattooed bear actually came to a halt and glanced at the group of people present. The intelligence of a high-rank magical beast wasn't inferior to that of humans at all, and a magical beast of the 9th rank might actually be even more intelligent than some humans. This violet tattooed bear could easily tell that these people in front of him were divided into 2 groups. On one side, there was a man and a magical beast. The other were the knights who were led by the man with only one hand. And that man with one hand seemed to be quite concerned about a ring. The violet tattooed bear could understand the human tongue. Although he couldn't speak in it, he could understand it. A hint of excitement appeared in the eyes of the violet tattooed bear. Woo, woo. The violet tattooed bear clapped its massive paws together excitedly, then charged directly towards Linley and Kaiser. Upon encountering any warriors in its path, it simply waved its massive paws, mercilessly batting them aside. A warrior of the 8th rank tried frantically to dodge, while at the same time a jade-green light appeared from his body. But although the violet tattooed bear didn't move that quickly, its paws were able to attack at a terrifying speed. Whap! The massive paw slammed against the warrior of the 8th rank. A sickening crunching sound could be heard as the man's head was instantly shattered. The warrior's battle chi aura was shattered as well, and his body was reduced to nothing more than ground meat. Even the ground beneath the man had a giant hole gouged into it, with deep cracks appearing in the area around the hole. Why is a magical beast of the 9th rank so much more powerful than humans of the same rank? Seeing this from afar, Linley's heart couldn't help but feel surprise. Kaiser, still engaged in battle against Linley, grew frantic as well. He didn't have any confidence at all in his ability to deal with the violet tattooed bear. Violet tattooed bears possessed extremely thick, durable skin and tremendous power. Even giant dragons would probably be reduced to a pulp by its massive paws. Its only flaw was that in terms of movement speed, it was rather slow. Its attack speed, however, was still astonishingly high. The violet tattooed bears could be considered one of the extremely powerful kinds of magical beasts of the 9th rank. Bam! 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 Linley and Kaiser exchanged blows at high speed, and Linley's arms, legs, and tail clashed non-stop with the great sword. The speed of their blows was at an astonishingly high level. Linley, relying on his astonishing defense, dared to fight with seemingly suicidal attacks, but Kaiser's techniques were effective, and he possessed both experience and powerful battle chi. The battle between them had no clear victor. Roar. The violet-tattooed bear had reached Linley and Kaiser, and it swiped down with its massive paws towards the two men. Swish! Linley and Kaiser both retreated backwards at high speed. Bam! The sound of the bear's paw slamming into the ground produced a deep vibration, causing the entire ground to shake, and the ground within 10 meters of the blow became covered with cracks. Neither Linley nor Kaiser chose to attempt to forcibly block that blow. A violet-tattooed bear's paw was perhaps the most powerful, durable part of its body. If they attempted to block it head-on, the two of them would have both become nothing more than meat paste. Roar! With a loud howl, the violet-tattooed bear actually turned and charged at Linley. Why the hell are you chasing me? Relying on his high speed, Linley began to flee. After having dragon formed, Linley possessed the speed of a warrior of the 9th rank, and a very fast one at that. At the same time, the violet-tattooed bear's weakness was its movement speed. It wasn't too hard for Linley shake it off. The violet-tattooed bear continued to charge forward, and anyone who got in its way was slapped to death. It only pursued Linley. Linley didn't know that the violet-tattooed bear had taken a fancy to that ring. Given its intelligence, and its understanding of human languages, the violet-tattooed bear knew that the ring was something which both parties valued. It was actually quite common for magical beasts of the 9th rank to understand the human tongues. They understood it, they just couldn't speak it, simply because their bodies weren't designed to speak it. But upon reaching the saint level, they could break free of this restriction and speak in human tongues. Ring, ring. Clady was about to cry. Your Majesty. Kaiser was standing guard in front of Clady. Your Majesty, it's best we leave now. If we don't leave, things will become extremely dangerous. Of the 33 members of the Wild Thunder Regiment, 14 had just been killed by BB. The remaining members were beginning to panic as well. The magical beast in front of them was physically small, possessed astonishing durability, and terrifying attack power. It was highly suited for dealing with humans. Roar! Roar! Suddenly, a mighty series of draconic roars could be heard from the skies, as hundreds of gigantic dragons with jade-green scales, blazing red scales, silvery scales, and even a very tyrannical-looking black dragon began to fly in this direction. Dragons possessed a very high level of intelligence. They knew that the palace held many treasures, and dragons loved collecting treasures. Roar! The leader of this flight, the massive black dragon, focused on Clady and Linley. With a mighty roar, it led the large pack of dragons to charge downwards towards the palace. Those fire dragons and emerald dragons were only dragons of the 8th rank, but silver dragons and black dragons were generally dragons of the 9th rank. Seeing this, Clady, Kaiser, and the others were all stunned. A single magical beast of the 9th rank was already hard enough to deal with. And now a horde of beasts was coming? Boss, this isn't good. Let's run. BB's voice rang out in Linley's head as well, but right now, Linley was still being pursued by that violet-tattooed bear who had taken a fancy to that interspatial ring. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 10, A Terrible Situation. Thud. With each step of its massive feet on the ground, the violet-tattooed bear would make the earth shake. This violet-tattooed bear was fixated on Linley. No matter where Linley ran off to, the violet-tattooed bear followed, while its two massive bear paws continually tried to reach out at him. Gruel. Hearing those familiar dragon roars, Linley couldn't help but look up at the skies. What he saw made his heart clench tightly. The sky was covered with countless massive dragon bodies. In terms of numbers, there were definitely more here today than that time previously at the Foggy Valley. What's more, within the host of dragons, there were even silver dragons and black dragons. Both of those were dragon-type beasts of the 9th rank. No. With a sudden leap, Linley avoided yet another attack from the violet-tattooed bear, then charged directly for Clady. No matter what, this time, I have to kill Clady. Get it, Ring, get it back. Clady's forehead was covered with sweat, but he didn't dare charge forward himself. Roar! Roar! Several dozen dragons swooped down from the skies, blasting forth dragon fire from their mouths. The flames belched forth by the black dragons were black in color as well, while the silver dragons exhaled plumes of silvery white flames. Clearly, in terms of temperature, the black flames and silver flames were far hotter than the dragon fire of the fire dragons. Sizzle sizzle. The temperature of the surrounding area immediately began to rise at a terrifying speed as several dozen streams of dragon fire blasted down. Your Majesty, if we don't leave, we'll die for sure. If we're dead, treasures will be useless to us. Kaiser's entire body was suffused with red battle chi. He roared frantically at Clady. Who started? Clady. A furious roar from the fully dragon-formed Linley, who was shooting towards him like an arrow. Go. Go, let's go. Clady immediately howled out the order angrily. This decision of Clady was an extremely painful one for him, but he too understood that if he died here, everything would be lost. In addition, his eldest prince and his second prince both had Magi crystal cards on them, with a combined value of 1 billion gold coins. 1 billion gold coins was definitely enough to allow a royal clan to rebuild and flourish again. Bam! Kaiser's giant sword once again blocked Linley's attack. Kaiser, let me kill Clady. No matter how much gold you desire, I'll give it to you. Linley was half mad with anxiousness as well. Kaiser just shook his head. Roar! Right at this moment, a black dragon suddenly swooped down and tried to snatch Linley with its claws. Black dragons were highly intelligent. Seeing how the violet-tattooed bear continuously pursued and tried to kill Linley, it was sure that there had to be a reason for the bear's fixation. Thus, its first target was Linley. Me again. Linley frantically dodged to the side. Just now, when he had been fighting with Kaiser, that violet-tattooed bear had decided to chase after him instead of Kaiser. And now, the same thing was happening again. The black dragon of the 9th rank chased after the fleeing Linley. Whew! Kaiser paid no more attention to Linley as he hurriedly upped his speed to the maximum and fled away. Immediately, several of the giant dragons began a pursuit of Clady and Kaiser, but the large majority of them continued to encircle and attack Linley. The violet-tattooed bear began to roar in anger as it rose to its hind feet. Clearly, it was enraged at the dragons for stealing its prey, but the violet-tattooed bear didn't dare to openly fight against the dragons either. The violet-tattooed bear wasn't confident of beating even that extremely large black dragon leader of this host of dragons, to say nothing of the rest of the dragons. Thud. 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 The violet-tattooed bear began to walk away in a different direction, moving a long distance with each stride. Every building in its way was crushed and demolished. Clady. Seeing Clady and his men grow farther and farther away, Linley wanted to immediately chase after them. But yet another massive dragon descended from the skies. This was a massive black dragon, over 100 meters long, and it blocked the road in front of Linley while constantly reaching for Linley with its claws. From its mouth, it repeatedly blasted hot flames at Linley. Both the earth and the skies were covered in dragons, and all of them were launching attacks at Linley. Surrounded and attacked by so many dragons, Linley felt miserable as well. Bastards! Encircled and besieged by a large number of dragons, Linley could only watch as Clady disappeared from his field of vision. Boss, we need to flee. BB was frantic now. BB was extremely agile, and also very small. It would be very difficult for those dragons to attack him. What's more, Bibi's fierce claws and sharp fangs were very powerful as well. His attack power was now enough to cause some harm to the dragons, causing all of them to be quite nervous with respect to that little tiny thing. Go. Go where? No matter in which direction Linley tried to flee, a host of dragons would block and attack. He wasn't afraid of dragons of the 8th rank, but there were more than 10 dragons of the 9th rank as well. Whap! Linley was attacked viciously by a silver dragon's tail, but Linley only flipped around in the air before trying to flee again. But it was useless. In midair, several dragons encircled and attacked again. Linley was in such a bad situation that he wanted to cry. Swish! Linley very agilely avoided an attack by a fierce claw, continuing to dodge about at high speed. Boss, I'll help you. Seeing the danger Linley was in, Bibi immediately flew over as well and began chomping down viciously at the leg of that dragon. Crunch! 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 Roar! That giant dragon let out a roar of pain. Relying on his astonishing speed, Linley managed to resolve one draconic attack after another. Whenever he met with real danger, Bibi would help out. The dragons weren't able to do anything to Linley for now either. In their eyes, this human-shaped aberration was too hard to deal with, and that even smaller-sized rat-type magical beast kept on nibbling at them and causing them pain. Roar! The leading black dragon let out another roar. Instantly, all of the dragons flew into the air. They had already made the decision to give up this battle against this difficult-to-deal-with human-shaped aberration. It was totally not worth it for an entire host of dragons to waste so much time on a single human-shaped aberration. The host of dragons flew away, just like that. They left. Linley was startled. Just moments ago, he had been frantically dealing with the attacks of many dragons, and he had been dodging for his life. That was a very miserable experience. He didn't expect the dragons to give up just like that. Boss, let's go now. Bibi urged. Right. Clady. Recalling Clady, Linley maintained his dragon form and led Bibi at a high-speed charge through the city. By now, the vicious battles between man and magical beast within Fenley City had all but come to an end. There were very few living people within Fenley City now, and virtually the only creatures alive on the streets were magical beasts that were hunting for living humans. The dragon-formed Linley moved too fast, and what's more, the fact that his body was covered in scales deceived many magical beasts into thinking that Linley was a magical beast as well. Not here. Linley had led a chase in the direction where he thought Clady would have fled to, but even after escaping Fenley City, he still didn't find any traces of Clady's party. Outside Fenley City. A desolate scene. Even many of the great trees that had lined the road to and from Fenley City had been shattered. Countless human corpses lay on the road as well. Clearly, these people had managed to flee Fenley City, but had been killed outside the city by magical beasts nonetheless. In the desolate countryside outside Fenley City, small groups of 1 or 2 magical beasts could be seen everywhere. I wonder what direction that Clady ran off in. Linley stared at the 3 branching forks ahead of him. He felt very helpless. It was possible that Clady might have even left through the east gate of Fenley City, but as Linley saw it, that was unlikely, because the further east they went, the closer they would have become to the mountain range of magical beasts. Thus, Linley had chosen to exit via the west gate. But despite having left by the west gate, Linley still didn't know in what direction he should now head. After all, there were hoof prints pointing every which way. Perhaps that Clady didn't choose any of the roads, and went cross-country into the wilderness. Linley said to himself. The weakest person in Clady's party was of the 7th rank, and so going cross-country wouldn't be difficult at all. Linley understood that the chance of finding Clady in the wilderness was very, very low. North. I heard that king of the mountain range of magical beasts say that the people of the Holy Union could only flee to the north. I'll head north as well. Given Clady's fame, there's no way that his passing will attract no attention. When I reach the north, I'll search for him again. Linley made up his mind. Seeing the corpses littering the area around him, Linley couldn't help but sigh. Ah! Wushan Township. Linley suddenly thought of his own hometown. Wushan Township was less than 100 kilometers away from Fenley City. What sort of shape was Wushan Township currently in? Linley couldn't be bothered to cancel his dragon form transformation, as he began to run at high speed available to him towards Wushan Township. Although Linley wasn't moving at maximum speed, after having assumed the dragon form, he was able to easily travel 200 or 300 kilometers each hour as a warrior of the 9th rank. The trees on each side of the road quickly disappeared into the distance, and dust flew about everywhere. Is that? A fleeing mounted knight suddenly saw a human-shaped aberration suddenly charge in his direction from behind. He couldn't help but be frightened, but Linley only passed him by, moving like the wind towards Wushan Township. This was the speed of a warrior of the 9th rank. Within 20 minutes, Linley had drawn close enough that he could see his hometown. Wushan Township. This was a very quiet little township. In the past, the lives of the commoners here had been very peaceful. But now, corpses. Mutilated corpses everywhere. Those corpses clearly bore the signs of having been ravaged by magical beasts. This, Linley walked onto the main road of Wushan Township. He stared at the corpses littering the main road or the side alleys. There were old people, young people, women, children. Seeing all this, Linley couldn't help but feel grief in his heart. Linley recognized the majority of these dead people. Linley suddenly saw a young man not far away, clutching a baby in his arms. That young man's body was covered with blood, and that baby had been bitten to death as well. Orson Aosen. Linley wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come out. Orson was only 1 year older than him. When Linley had first started his physical training at the empty training grounds outside Wushan Township, both of them had been placed within the 6 to 8 year old group. Orson was the little boy who had stood right next to Linley when they had lined up. The two of them were on fairly good terms. Linley knew that 2 years ago, Orson had gotten married after reaching the age of maturity. That dead infant was most likely Orson's child. Rip. Rip. Not too far away, several windwolves were chewing on the corpses of the dead. Ah! Linley cast a furious glare at them, then flew towards them like a bolt of lightning. He didn't use his blood violet god's word. Using his 2 hands, he either smashed their heads in or ripped them into several pieces barehanded. In the blink of an eye, the few dozen magical beasts which had remained in Wushan Township were all killed. Seeing the magical beast corpses around him, as well as the human corpses, Linley cancelled his dragon form transformation, a pained laugh escaping him. And then, he fell to his knees, powerless. Everyone was dead. Ha ha, Linley began to laugh in a low voice, but his eyes had begun to fill with tears. When the magical beasts ambushed the city and I escaped from the Radiant Temple, I was so immeasurably smug and self-satisfied with myself. But, Linley's tears began to flow. Only now did Linley truly understand the meaning behind the words that King of the Mountain Range of Magical Beasts had spoken. How could I be a pathetic human? Humans are nothing more than food to us magical beasts. Food. Food. Linley's heart was filled with grief. Wushan Township. His hometown. These familiar fellow villagers. All dead. When he had left his hometown, Linley had felt fairly calm, because he had always known that his hometown would still be there. But now, his hometown was gone. Everyone was dead. What a calamity. Douring Cowart's ancient voice rang out. Not just for your hometown. Most likely nearly half of the entire Holy Union has now become the domain of magical beasts. Those people will become nothing more than food. Linley quietly stared at his surroundings. He could totally envision how the countless people within the domain of the Holy Union had now been trapped within a catastrophic nightmare. This so-called Day of Joy, the 10,000th anniversary of the Yulan festival, to the people of the Holy Union and the Dark Alliance, had become a day of catastrophe. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 11, The Titanic Black Python. When a catastrophe occurred, the only thing a person could do was accept it. After leaving Wushan Township, Linley and BB headed north. Everything Linley saw only made him all the more taciturn. The entire kingdom of Fenley had turned into a playground for magical beasts, and human corpses were nothing more than food for them. On the long road north, magical beasts occasionally dotted the landscape. Not a single living human being could be seen. But suddenly, a human form appeared at the end of the road. The human form was moving forward quickly, and was being pursued by several howling magical beasts. But with a few flashes of violet light, those magical beasts were diced apart, and the human form continued northwards. On this person's shoulders, there was an adorable little black shadow mouse. "Boss, shouldn't we find a place to rest? I'm getting a bit hungry." Standing on Linley's shoulders, BB mentally spoke to Linley. Linley cast a helpless look at BB. This entire trip, he was the one who had been actively moving, while BB was either just standing on his shoulders, enjoying the wind, or sleeping inside Linley's clothes. How exactly was he tired? "Fine. There's a mountain up ahead. We can kill a few magical beasts and cook them for food." Linley still pampered and spoiled BB as always. To Linley, aside from his 3 brothers and his younger brother Wharton, who was in the O'Brien Empire along with Uncle Hillman and housekeeper Hyrie, he had no close kin. But meeting with Wharton or his 3 brothers was and would be an extremely rare thing. Only BB would always be by his side. In Linley's heart, he viewed BB as a younger brother to be pampered and spoiled. This blood-violet God's word is still quite handy when dealing with magical beasts of the 7th or 8th ranks. But it is quite hard for it to penetrate the defense of a magical beast of the 9th rank and deliver a sufficiently deadly wound. Linley glanced at the sword at his waist and sighed. The blood-violet God's word was very sharp, very fast, and could bend in any which way he desired it to. It was thus extremely useful when dealing against large numbers of weaker enemies. But when used to deal with a single powerful magical beast, this blood-violet God's word of Linley's was actually not even as good as Linley's own claws and draconic tail. At the base of the stubby mountain, Linley and BB were roasting a pair of wolf legs. BB and Linley had not yet left the boundaries of the kingdom of Fenley, and so the area was swarming with magical beasts. But given Linley and BB's current power, as long as they didn't encounter any saint-level magical beasts, they would be safe. "It's cooked." BB immediately grabbed a haunch of wolf leg and began to chomp through it. With a wave of his hand, Linley extinguished the fire, then grabbed the roasted wolf leg and began eating as well. This roasted wolf leg, when cooked alongside some wild herbs and grasses, was actually quite tasty. In the mountain wilderness areas, one could often find some ingredients which could be used for cooking. This was a survival skill one learned in the mountain range of magical beasts, and Linley naturally knew it. That wolf leg was much larger than BB, but BB finished eating it before Linley had. By the time Linley was halfway through, BB had finished his portion. Slither slither. Suddenly, a very minute sound could be heard from far away. Linley froze in mid-bite, while BB's little ears perked up as well. In unison, the man and the magical beast turned to stare behind them. It was a python. An enormous python, easily the size of a house. Those 2 bizarre, reptilian eyes looked like giant red lanterns. Only 10 or so meters of its enormous body could be seen outside of a grove, but just judging from the fact that its body was 3 meters thick, Linley could easily imagine how terrifyingly large this creature really was. The visible 10 or so meters was just a small part of it. Seeing the dense black skin, tattooed with yellow lines, the expression on Linley's face changed. It's a titanic black python. Linley was instantly sure of this magical beast's breed. Titanic black pythons were considered one of the more powerful types of pythons. Generally speaking, adult titanic black pythons were magical beasts of the 9th rank, roughly on par with the 9-headed serpents. Amongst python-type beasts, the titanic black python was famed as a war machine. If you were to place a titanic black python in the middle of an army, it could definitely kill 100,000 soldiers. It was a darkness-style magical beast with incredible defensive powers. Its fangs were poisonous. These were the special traits of the titanic black python. Hiss! Hiss! The forked tongue of the titanic black python flicked in and out, and its cold eyes stared at Linley and Bibi. Clearly, this titanic black python had already decided that Linley and Bibi were to be its next meals. Bibi! Be careful! Linley's gaze was locked on the titanic black python, not daring to relax in the slightest. At the same time, dense black scales began to erupt from Linley's skin. And a row of spikes rose up out of his back. His forehead, elbows, and knees all sprouted fierce, sharp spikes as well. Whap! Whap! Linley's draconic tail slapped the ground a few times. By Linley's side, all of the hair on Bibi's body was standing up straight. Seeing this, the titanic black python suddenly rose up high in the air. Clearly, it was now on guard and vigilant. Whoosh! Like a gust of wind, the entire body of the titanic black python shot forward. In less than a second, its enormous, 100-meter-long body was striking against Linley and Bibi, who both also almost simultaneously launched attacks against the titanic black python. Swish! Blood violet flashed. Clang! Linley heard a sound similar to a hammer striking against an anvil. His blood violet god's word had only been able to leave behind a white mark on the titanic black python's skin, and hadn't managed to wound it at all. It really is very durable. The enormous body of the titanic black python began to wrap around Linley. Linley knew that if he allowed it to constrict him, not only would he be unable to breathe, the terrifyingly powerful constrictive force would probably be able to crush him to death. Hey! Linley's sharp claws suddenly pierced towards the titanic black python's body. With a rip sound, his claws penetrated the titanic black python's outer layer of scales. However, Linley could feel that his claws could go no further. Beneath the scales, Linley could sense an astonishingly durable force. Whoosh! The python was about to constrict Linley. Linley only laughed coldly. He suddenly ripped his claws free and leaped outside of the titanic black python's coils, while at the same time smashing his elbows down at the titanic black python. Linley's elbows had those sharp spikes on them, which were the unique traits of armored razorback WYRMs and possessed astonishing power. Ryep! The spike pierced through the black scales and slowly penetrated downwards. What exactly is underneath the scales of this titanic black python? Its defense is so formidable. Linley's sharp spike was only able to penetrate halfway through before being stopped. Arg! The titanic black python let out an angry, pain-filled roar, and in a flash, its massive head struck towards Linley, its bloody maw opened wide. Suddenly, a black liquid shot out from its mouth and was spat towards Linley. Venom! Linley immediately leapt off against the body of the titanic black python, hurriedly dodging backwards. But the amount of black venom was too great, and the area it covered too large. Some of it still managed to land on Linley's legs. Sizzle, sizzle. A strange sound could be heard coming from Linley's legs. Linley could feel that the black venom which landed on his legs had been totally blocked by that layer of defensive scales. The defensive powers of an armored razorback WYRM were quite formidable, and the venom didn't pose much of a danger to the scales. Boss, let's run. That titanic black python is freakishly tough. Its scales and flesh are too thick. Bibi urged. Run. Without hesitating in the slightest, Linley and BB went running northwards. Slithering forward rapidly, the titanic black python gave chase for a while, but in the end, Linley and BB managed to leave it in the dust. After escaping the titanic black python's pursuit, Linley and BB finally left the boundaries of the former kingdom of Fenley. However, despite having left its boundaries, they still saw the same desolate sights. It seemed as though the king of the mountain range of magical beasts had told the truth. They intended to take over half of the territory which had belonged to the Holy Union. Swish! Blood violet flashed, easily cutting a dragon hawk in two. BB, tell me, why is it so hard for us to deal with magical beasts of the 9th rank? By now, Linley had already encountered several magical beasts of the 9th rank, such as the black dragon and violet tattooed bear in Fenley City. When faced with these creatures, Linley was forced to dodge. There was no way for him to take them head-on. Even when dealing with the fairly slow violet tattooed bear and titanic black python, Linley wasn't able to truly harm them. BB was speechless as well. BB and Linley both had the same problem. BB's problem was that he was physically small, and probably wouldn't even be able to chew past the opponent's thick skin with his teeth. How would he harm the enemy? Linley. Do-Ring Coward's voice rang out. Linley suddenly came to his senses. Right. Why not ask Grandpa Do-Ring? Grandpa Do-Ring had vast experience, and certainly should have seen many saint-level combatants. He must have some sort of understanding in this regard. Linley, are you frustrated by the question of dealing with magical beasts of the 9th rank? Do-Ring Coward laughed. Linley nodded. Yes, Grandpa Do-Ring. Do you know what I should do? Do-Ring Coward continued, Linley, actually, your blood violet god's word is quite powerful. But the problem is, pre-dragon form, you are only a warrior of the 7th rank. Post-dragon form, you are still only an early stage 9th rank warrior. As an early stage 9th rank warrior, you think you can kill a magical beast of the 9th rank? Linley was startled. Right. The problem was that he wasn't strong enough. When you enter the 8th rank, you will be a peak stage warrior of the 9th rank in dragon form. By then, you will be able to harm magical beasts of the 9th rank using your claws or using blood violet. Do-Ring Coward chuckled. However, it's still possible for you at your current level of power to deal with magical beasts of the 9th rank as well. How? Linley exulted. Grandpa Do-Ring really did know a way. Do-Ring Coward said, Linley, did you notice that both Kaiser and Clady used great swords? Linley thought back to his battles. Right, Kaiser and Clady did indeed both use great swords. Do you know why they use great swords? Do-Ring Coward asked. Linley was beginning to grow curious. Right. As warriors of the 9th rank, Clady and Kaiser naturally knew that using lighter weapons would be faster. Why did they choose to use great swords instead? Linley couldn't help but to think back to those battles he had with Kaiser. Linley, when I was young, I remember that whenever my father was cutting down trees, he would always use heavy axes, rather than small hatchets. Why is that? Do-Ring Coward guided patiently. Linley started to have an inkling of understanding. Light weapons are sharp. When dealing with large groups of enemies, they are very effective. But when fighting in solo combat against a powerful foe, they are inferior to heavy weapons. Through usage of a heavy weapon, a person can utilize more of his power and increase the force of his blows. And, to a warrior of the 9th rank, even a weapon weighing a few hundred pounds won't slow him down too much. Linley was now beginning to truly comprehend. Only through using heavy weapons could one truly unleash all of the power they were capable of. For example, would a strongman deliver more powerful blows using a massive mace, or a light sword? A dragon blood warrior was capable of lifting boulders weighing tens of thousands of pounds. Their potential strength was extremely astonishing. No wonder why when I faced the titanic black python, I felt as though using the blood violet god's word wasn't as effective as using my own fists and claws. Linley said. Perhaps I too should find a heavy weapon to use. While chatting, Linley continued to make his way northwards into the desolate wilderness. Boss, there's a squad of knights up ahead. Bibi suddenly said to him mentally. Linley looked carefully. Indeed, up ahead, there was a squad of knights taking a break up ahead. Linley had already encountered quite a few such squads. Generally speaking, squads capable of surviving in these magical beast-infested lands were composed of elite soldiers belonging to major clans. No need to pay them any mind. Linley ignored these people, continuing forward. But when he drew near, Linley suddenly noticed a familiar face. Shaq. Second Prince Shaq. Linley was startled. As the Prime Court Magus for the Kingdom of Fenley, Linley knew both Crown Prince Care and Second Prince Shaq. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 12, The Rescue. Traveling on this desolate road, Shaq, the second Prince of Fenley, was bitterly cursing at these magical beasts. Off in the distance, Linley quietly removed the interspatial ring from his fingers and placed it within one of his pockets. The royal clan of Fenley divided into several squads when they left. No doubt, they had made prior arrangements for where they would meet up. Linley was worrying about where he would find Clady, but now that Heaven had delivered Shaq and his squad to him, how could Linley not be overjoyed? In addition, Linley could guess that when he had tried to assassinate Clady, then been captured by the Radiant Church, the Radiant Church had originally still planned to make use of him and thus had most likely had ordered Clady to keep silent. Perhaps this Shaq doesn't yet know that the demon who tried to kill his father was me. As he was thinking these thoughts, Linley began to walk in Shaq's direction. Linley had another thought as well. If Shaq knows that I tried to kill his father, then none of them will be spared. Shaq's men were powerful in comparison to most magical beasts, but compared to these two freaks Linley and Bibi, they weren't much at all. Second Prince. Your Highness. Linley called out in a loud, friendly voice. Shaq, who had been eating roasted meat while cursing, started upon hearing Linley's shout. He swiveled his head over to look at Linley. As he did so, Linley and Bibi both watched him carefully, paying attention to his every facial expression and to his gaze. If anything seems off at all, first we capture, then we kill. Linley carefully watched Shaq's eyes and face. Upon seeing Linley, Shaq excitedly jumped to his feet. He charged over, his burly body 2 meters tall, and immediately pulled Linley into a massive hug. In an overjoyed voice, he said, Lord Linley, you actually made it out safely. This is wonderful. Wonderful. I am very happy to be able to see you here as well, Second Prince. Linley didn't detect any falseness in Shaq's eyes or expressions. He nodded to himself. Linley's guess was spot on. Clady had been instructed by the Radiant Church to remain silent, and that he could not, no matter what, reveal that the demon who had attempted to assassinate him was Linley. No matter how daring Clady was, he wouldn't dare disobey the direct orders of the Radiant Church. Lord Linley, have you eaten yet? Come eat with us. Shaq warmly said. Right now, Shaq had no idea that he was walking on a fine line between life and death. If just now, there had been anything wrong with his facial expressions, he would have died. Lord Linley, please don't blame my royal father for not rescuing you. Those hordes of monsters came too quickly. My royal father had no choice. He didn't even bring most of his royal consorts, only just the most important ones. Shaq explained on behalf of his father. I can understand. Linley nodded while walking towards their camp. All of those elite knights reminded Linley of the Wild Thunder Regiment knights he had fought back when he attacked Clady at the royal palace. The knights in front of him had a very similar aura and bearing to those knights back then. Aside from those 30 or so knights, there was a slightly older lady, and a little girl who was only 5 or 6 years old. My respects to you, royal consort. My respects to you, princess. Linley immediately bowed towards those two women. The very beautiful, refined-looking consort was over 40 years old, but she looked as though she was barely 30. She was an alluring, attractive woman. The consort immediately left. Linley, when His Majesty left, he was in a terrible rush. He didn't bring a single magus with him. And, he felt confident that the Radiant Church would rescue you, thus. Both Shak and the consort immediately made explanations for Clady. Both Shak and the consort felt that it was very important to have good relations with Linley. They didn't know the real relationship between Linley and Clady. I understand. But in his heart, Linley was laughing coldly. Earlier, when he was battling with Clady's men in the palace, Linley had already noticed that the guards consisted solely of knights, and that no magi were present. Similarly, there were no magi present here in Shak's squad either. Clearly, when fleeing, Clady hadn't had time to look after his magi at all. Although magi were very useful when it came to doing battle, this time they were engaging in flight, not in battle with magical beasts. Bringing a magus along would actually slow things down. How could a magus travel as quickly as a powerful warrior? Some of the more powerful warriors could run like the wind even if they had no horse. But magi? On this desolate road, Shak and his squad continued to hurry forward non-stop. Some of the formerly prosperous villages on the way had already been reduced to ash, and rotting corpses were strewn everywhere. In this wasteland, magical beasts could often be seen roaming about singly or in pairs. Those lucky humans who had managed to escape the first massacre would eventually all be chased down and eaten by these roaming magical beasts. Our kingdom of Fenley is finished. Shak, riding side by side with Linley on their horses, said with a sigh as he looked off into the distance. Occasionally, a magical beast would launch attacks against them, but the Wild Thunder Knights would easily dispose of them. Shak and Linley's conversations weren't disrupted at all. Most likely 9 out of 10 citizens of the Kingdom of Fenley are dead now. Linley's face was full of sorrow and despair as well. Shak nodded slightly. In his heart, Shak was also in mourning. The destruction of the Kingdom of Fenley meant that his clan was no longer a royal clan. When there was no kingdom, how could there be a royal clan? Fortunately, Shak's thoughts turned to the 5 Magi crystal cards in his bag. With these 5 Magi crystal cards, even though the royal clan of Fenley no longer had a kingdom, it wouldn't be too hard for them to become a powerful clan again, thanks to their thousands of years of accumulated wealth. Linley suddenly said, "Second Prince, where will we be meeting with His Majesty?" The purpose of Linley traveling with Shak was to learn of Clady's whereabouts. Shak said with resignation, "Lord Linley, my royal father and I originally didn't expect the scope of this disaster to be so wide. Thus, the 2 meeting points we had originally designated were within the Kingdom of Fenley's borders and are now useless. Right now, the only thing I can do is follow our original plan and keep heading north. When we reach one of the cities that was designated by me and my royal father, we will stop, if the city is safe." Linley instantly understood. Clady and Shak had designated more than one city as possible rendezvous points. They most likely designated a string of cities heading north of the city of Fenley. Whichever city was safe would be the city they would stop at. "Which cities did you and His Majesty designate as meeting points?" Linley asked with a laugh. Shak wasn't suspicious at all. He immediately said, "There were quite a few cities. Some were within the Kingdom of Fenley, while others were in the kingdoms and dukedoms to the north. We even designated a city within the O'Brien Empire." "The O'Brien Empire?" Linley began to laugh. Shak said, somewhat embarrassed, "My royal father was worried that these magical beasts might take over the territory of the entire Holy Union. If that was the case, we would be forced to flee to the O'Brien Empire. The O'Brien Empire is the empire with the strongest military force in the Yulon continent, and definitely would be able to stop those magical beasts. Linley knew much more than Shaq did. The O'Brien Empire didn't just possess a powerful military. It also had War God O'Brien. As long as the War God was present, even that king of the mountain range of magical beasts would have to seriously consider whether or not attacking the O'Brien Empire was a good idea. No need to overthink it. We'll just continue to make our way forward. When we reach a safe spot, we'll find the nearest city that my father and I designated, then we'll rest. Lord Linley, let's speed up. Giddy up, giddy up. As he spoke, Shaq sped up as well. Their hoofsteps speeding up, the squad of knights quickly made their way through the wilderness. Traveling with Shaq and his squad, Linley no longer had to personally act when they were attacked by magical beasts. Those Wild Thunder troops disposed of all the attackers. 3 days later, 2 kingdoms and 3 duchies have collapsed. Shaq and Linley had passed the kingdom of Fenley, the kingdom of Hanmuo, as well as 2 duchies. They had just entered the dukedom of Ligead, but here, too, no humans could be seen. Such a huge swath of territory had fallen. This really was an astonishing event. After all, the Holy Union only had 6 kingdoms and 15 duchies to begin with. Growl. Growl. A series of growls from magical beasts could be heard from far away, mixed with the shouts of men. Hearing those mixed sounds, Linley and Shaq immediately knew what was going on. There's a battle between humans and magical beasts going on up ahead. Shaq frowned. Rubbing his chin, he said, "Everyone, be careful. Let's go around them." "Yes." The members of the Wild Thunder squad said respectfully. Leading his men, Shaq carefully circled around the area in front. But when they got close to the combat area, Shaq suddenly stared at the battlefield. Prince Louis Loyi. Linley also turned to pay attention to that battlefield. Another elite squad of knights was there, but unfortunately, this squad had terrible luck. They had run into a pack of fire lions. Fire lions were fire element magical beasts of the 7th rank. They could easily blast fireballs from their mouths, and their bodies were wreathed in flame. Although they were only magical beasts of the 7th rank, magical beasts naturally were more powerful than most humans of the same rank. Even a warrior of the 8th rank would usually have to expend some effort to kill a fire element magical beast of the 7th rank. But clearly, within that elite squad of knights, there were very few warriors of the 8th rank. The majority were of the 7th rank. Over half of this squad of knights had died as a result of this battle against nearly 20 fire lions. Only a third of the fire lions had perished. But although half of the knights had perished, none of the warriors of the 8th rank had. Thus, in reality, the squad of knights had only lost a third of its total combat potential. "Stop!" Shaq ordered. The group of knights were startled, but they all nodded. The power of the Wild Thunder squad, when added to Prince Louis' forces, should be enough to kill those fire lions without too much trouble. But what surprised them was that Shaq didn't permit them to do battle right away. Another half of Prince Louis' men had died or been injured, including 2 warriors of the 8th rank. Half of the fire lions had died as well. Only now did Shaq give the order. "Let's go. Rescue Prince Louis." Shaq suddenly ordered his men. Yes. Instantly, the Wild Thunder squad began to charge. With the added strength of these 30-plus warriors, 10 of them of the 8th rank, 5 of the fire lions were instantly killed. The rest, seeing the writing on the wall, quickly turned tail and fled. "Prince Shaq, thank you, thank you." Prince Louis was an extremely handsome young man, but right now, he looked to be in a very sorry state. Upon seeing Shaq, Louis was so grateful that he ran over to hug him. "Prince Louis, alas, I saw your squad of knights attacked from quite far away, but due to self-preservation considerations, I hesitated for a while. Only after I saw it was you did I order my men to come attack. I hope you won't blame me." Shaq said very honestly. He regretfully added, if I had come a bit earlier, you would have lost fewer men. Earlier, Shaq and his knights had waited far away for quite a while. How could experts like Lewis and his men not be aware? In his heart, Lewis had borne a grudge towards Shaq. But now, hearing him say this, Lewis somewhat believed him. It made sense. After such a disaster had occurred, who would go rescue someone who had no relation to oneself? Prince Shaq, no need to say such things. I am already extremely grateful. If it weren't for you, most likely only 2 or 3 of us would be remaining. Hey, no need. We can take care of our own people's corpses. Seeing one of Shaq's men actually go and remove the bags from the corpses of their own volition, Lewis shouted out at them. As soon as the fire lions had fled, those few lucky survivors of Prince Louis' force immediately went to remove the bags from the corpses of the deceased, then put them on. This naturally raised Shaq's suspicions. Why bring the bags of the deceased? Thus, he ordered that man to go remove some of the bags. Indeed, it had agitated Prince Louis. All right, here you go. Shaq's knight immediately handed the bag over. When Louis' knight received the bag, he glared angrily at Shaq's knight. Seeing this, Shaq only laughed coldly in his heart. This was too easy to guess. Very few royal clans were in possession of an interspatial ring. The royal clan of Linley had only managed to acquire one through great luck. Now that disaster had struck, naturally these royal clans would want to take the treasures in their treasuries with them. Without interspatial rings, the only option was to carry them in bags. For Prince Louis to be so agitated about these bags most likely meant that he was having his subordinates carry important treasures of the kingdom of Han Mu. Not too many men left 100% chance of success. Shaq looked at Louis' men. He had already made his decision. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 13, A Major Treasure. Prince Shaq, thank you once again for your assistance. Let us part ways here. Prince Louis said with a smile. Shaq's face immediately turned stern. Unhappily, he said, Prince Louis, what's the rush? Right now, this area is covered with magical beasts, and you only have 7 people left. If you meet any more magical beasts on the road, it'll be very dangerous. Come along with us. With our combined strength, we will be safer as well. Prince Louis hurriedly said, Prince Shaq, no. Don't refuse. Otherwise, I'll get angry. Shaq said with a stern, angry look. Prince Louis looked very awkward, but in his heart, he was furious. He, Prince Louis, wasn't an idiot. He knew that his subordinates' earlier actions of collecting off the bags of the deceased had aroused suspicion. It was true. The bags of his subordinates contained the major treasures of the royal clan of the kingdom of Han Mu. The royal clan of Han Mu had been in existence for over 1,000 years. Although its history wasn't as long as that of the royal clan of Linley, it still possessed an astonishing amount of wealth and major treasures. However, their royal clan didn't have any interspatial rings, and so they had to carry their treasures with them. Actually, in such a chaotic period, the various noble clans of Linley and Han Mu had all thrown their valuables and magi crystal cards in bags and fled. The number of people in the entire continent who had interspatial rings was very low. Even a powerful entity such as the Prolx Gallery had only one, belonging to managing director Maya. This Shaq is full of bad intentions. Louis was extremely worried. He wanted to refuse. But he was afraid that Shaq really would have a falling out with him. A knight by the side of Prince Louis nudged him, then stepped forward. This knight was the instructor for Prince Louis. Since Prince Shaq is so sincere, then we shall travel alongside your squad. Only, we're sorry to have troubled you, Prince Shaq. No trouble at all. Ha, let's go together. Shaq laughed loudly. Just judging from appearances alone, this 2-meter tall, burly man looked like a foolish boor. But having grown up in the royal clan, how could Shaq truly be foolish? He, too, could guess what the other party was thinking. Nonetheless, he led everyone traveling north. "Boss, the atmosphere seems really weird," BB said mentally to Linley. Linley laughed inwardly. That Prince Louis didn't dare to offend Prince Shaq too much, but he had to be careful so as to prevent Prince Shaq from acting against him. Naturally, this expedition became rather special. Watching both sides, Linley knew exactly what was going on. After chatting for a while with Prince Louis, Prince Shaq separated, then rode over to Linley. In a low voice, he said, "Lord Linley, did you see?" "See? See what?" Linley looked at Shaq. After making sure that no one belonging to Prince Louis was nearby, Prince Shaq said in a low voice, "The royal clan of Hanmu is in flight. They surely took with them many of the major treasures they accumulated over their 1,000 years of existence. In my estimation, those knights' bags are all filled with major treasures." Linley knew that the existence of the Golden Bank of the Four Empires had made Magi crystal cards quite popular. Even large clans and royal clans used Magi crystal cards. To these clans who possessed hundreds of millions of gold coins in wealth, most treasures weren't a big deal. For example, when they were fleeing, these nobles couldn't be bothered to bring something like blue heart grass, which was worth 100,000 gold coins. The only things they would take were the most important treasures, all worth over 1,000,000 gold coins, such as Magi sight cores of magical beasts of the 9th rank or of the saint level, or perhaps treasures from other planes. Or divine artifacts. "Lord Linley, as long as you are willing to assist, when we divide the treasures, naturally you will have a share as well. No two shares. What do you say?" "In my view, those treasures must be worth several million gold coins at least," Shaq said in a low voice. Shaq knew very well what an astonishing amount of wealth the royal clan possessed. Because in his own hands, there were 500 million gold coins in Magi crystal cards. The kingdom of Hanmu wasn't inferior to the kingdom of Fenley. They probably possessed the same amount of wealth. How could the major treasures they carried out be of low quality? "Fine." Linley nodded. "When you plan to make your move, notify me as to what you wish." Hearing this, Shaq was extremely excited. Perhaps when they were fleeing, Magi were hindrances, but when they were able to engage in a battle, their power was astonishing. Linley was a dual-element magus of the 7th rank. With their opponents totally caught off guard, he alone could probably kill half of them. Linley carefully inspected those 7 people on Prince Louis' side. Right now, each of them were carrying 4 or 5 bags. In particular, HRM. Linley suddenly noticed that the sound of hoof steps of one middle-aged man's horse was particularly loud. In addition, that horse seemed more tired than the other horses as well. More importantly, that middle-aged man had another horse running alongside him. He had 2 horses to himself. Clearly, this middle-aged man needed to frequently change horses. These horses are both fine horses. Even if they were carrying 3 or 4 people, they would gallop like the wind. Why would this middle-aged man cause these horses to be so tired, to the point where he would have to frequently change horses? Linley instantly understood the reason. This middle-aged man was very heavy. Or, to put it another way, the things he was carrying was very heavy. But this middle-aged man is only carrying a short sword. Can it be that within his bags, Linley's only explanation was that the 4 bags the middle-aged man was carrying included something extremely heavy? The wind howled. Both Prince Louis and Prince Shaq's men had retired for the night. No matter how strong one was, they would still need rest. Prince Louis and his 6 warriors all rested together, while Prince Shaq's men were divided into 4 or 5 units. These 2 forces were located in separate areas. "Master, when should we leave?" Prince Louis said in a soft voice. The other 5 men were all feigning sleep. "Wait a bit longer. When they've all fallen asleep, we'll mount and leave. That middle-aged man said quietly. Fleeing into the dark night was a very common strategy. It was a common strategy because many people used it, and many people used it because it was effective. The 30 people on Prince Shak's side were feigning sleep as well. Not a single one of them was truly asleep. Everyone knew that there would be a battle they had to fight tonight. Lord Linley. Prince Shak was by Linley's side. He called out to Linley in a soft voice. HRM. Linley turned to look at Shak. Prince Shak continued, Lord Linley, prepare to secretly cast a magic spell. This will catch them off guard and make them suffer heavy losses. And then, my squad will charge over and finish them off. Lord Linley, it's up to you now. Fine. Linley nodded. A sudden sneak attack via magic at night was something which opponents definitely would not be able to foresee. Linley's lips began to move slightly as he quietly began to chant the words to a magical spell. By his side, Prince Shak could only wait impatiently. Poor Prince Louis and his men actually wanted to wait a while longer and flee after Prince Shak and his men had fallen asleep. Swish. 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 In a circular area with a radius of 10 meters, dozens of sharp earthen spears suddenly jutted out of the ground. Ah! A series of agonized screams sounded out as those sharp earthen spears suddenly pierced through those warriors' bodies, and one of them was directly impaled through and through. That poor Prince Louis was instantly killed as well by those spears. He was, after all, the weakest person amongst them. The thickly clustered array of earthen spears was enough to freeze one's heart. Earth-style magic of the 7th rank, earthen spear array. 4 of the 7 people in Prince Louis' party died in agony on the spot, while the 3 remaining warriors of the 8th rank suffered serious injuries as well, due to being caught off guard. Kill. The 30 members of the Wild Thunder Squad were previously feigning sleep, but hearing those miserable screams, they all charged towards the other camp as though they had received orders. They immediately attacked those 3 wounded warriors of the 8th rank, in a 30 against 3 fight. This wasn't a fair contest at all. What's more, the Wild Thunder Squad had 10 warriors of the 8th rank. Slice. Slice. Those 3 wounded warriors of the 8th rank were easily killed. They were barely able to resist at all. Second Prince, all of them are dead now. The captain of the Wild Thunder Squad, an energetic, golden-haired middle-aged man reported. Shak was overjoyed. Haha, wonderful. Quick, bring those bags over to me. For this action alone, I will award all of you 100,000 gold coins. When we reunite with my royal father, I will disperse the gold. Shak was extremely excited. There were 30 people in the Wild Thunder Squad. 100,000 gold coins each was only a total of 3 million gold coins. But the wealth contained within those 10 bags surely was worth more than 100 million gold coins. Come, Lord Linley. You pick 2 bags first. Shak said very magnanimously to Linley. The usefulness of a magus in pitched group battles had been totally put on display. This sneak attack by magic of Linley's had killed 4 and heavily injured the remaining 3. If Shak had ordered his men to directly attack, quite a few of them probably would have died. Linley walked directly over to Prince Louis' master's corpse, the middle-aged man. He hefted each of the 4 bags. As he did so, Linley indeed noticed something strange. 3 of the bags were very light, very ordinary. But the last bag, it seemed very small, and the object inside was only the size of a man's palm, but its weight was over 1,000 pounds. Something the size of a hand but over 1,000 pounds in weight. Linley was stunned. He had never heard of anything this dense and heavy. Even gold and diamonds were much lighter than this material. The size of a hand, but over 1,000 pounds. Lord Linley. Shak walked over. Have you chosen? No need to choose. I'll just go with these 2. Linley randomly grabbed another bag from the remaining 3, then slung the 2 bags over his back. Seeing this, Shaq felt very happy as well. What he worried about the most was that Linley would open every single bag to take a look inside, then make his decision. This would be quite unfair to him. But Linley had just casually heft the bags on a single person, then chose 2 of them. All of Shaq's subordinates were now carrying bags. Let's go. Shaq was now in a wonderful mood. Linley was riding on a horse as well, but while riding the horse, Linley had cast the floating technique on himself. Given his power as a magus of the 7th rank, using a spell of the 5th rank was extremely easy. Linley used the levitational powers of the floating technique to counteract the extra weight of that mysterious object. This allowed the horse he was riding to continue galloping without strain. Grandpa Douring. Linley immediately pressed him. Take a look and see what I have inside these 2 new bags of mine. Oh, you got some treasures. Douring Coward, who had been napping inside the coiling dragon ring, was suddenly full of energy. He immediately used his spiritual energy to directly sense what was inside Linley's 2 bags. Within that first bag is a brocade box wrapped in several layers of cloth. Inside the box there is a matching pair of beautiful jade crystals. They should have quite the history. But I don't know where they are from. Douring Coward said. The second bag, ah! Douring Coward cried out in surprise. What is it? Linley's heart clenched in excitement. He knew that the second bag had to be the one containing the strange item weighing over 1,000 pounds, because the item inside the second bag wasn't a perfectly rectangular box. Adamantine. Adamantine ore. There's actually a fist-sized chunk of adamantine ore in the Yulon continent. This is astonishing. Douring Coward said in amazement. Hearing the words adamantine, Linley's heart clenched yet again. Adamantine didn't actually exist in the material plane. It only came from other planes, and it was so tough and durable that supposedly even most deity-level combatants couldn't easily break it. When he was jailed in the Radiant Temple, that lock with some adamantine alloyed into it would have been hard for even a saint-level combatant to break. From this, one could tell how tough adamantine was. A fist-sized chunk of adamantine ore. This is more valuable than even a saint-level magicite core. How could there be such a huge chunk in the world? Douring Coward simply couldn't believe it. A fist-sized chunk is huge. Linley was rather confused.